I feel like the question, can goblins even get cholera, is a is an appropriate question. Hello there. Is this Final Fantasy music? Well, this is Club Penguin, but the one that was before that was Animal Crossing, and then the Stage 5 theme from Pokemon. So, I'll give you the link to the music if you're interested, but it hasn't been Final Fantasy yet today. It might be later. Shiny thing is food. Yeah. Yeah. I like shiny things. I like shiny things that are edible. Alright. So we're on, oh, my hair's so fluffy. It's so soft and fluffy. I got new shampoo and conditioner, and it feels so nice. It feels so nice. Alright, we're on PredictionX, Jon Snow and the cholera outbreak of 1854. I don't know anything about any of this. At least with latitude and longitude, I kind of had an idea, and like with omens and stuff, I kind of had an idea. With this, I have no clue. I don't know where this is going. I don't know what this is up to. I don't know what the hell is what we're gonna run into. But let's get started. I guess we start on the introduction. Thank you for joining us. Get out of here! I do wish that pop-up would fuck off a little bit. It's a little bit obnoxious. Alright. Thank you for joining us for PredictionX, Jon Snow and the Cholera Outbreak of 1854. This course explores a deadly outbreak of cholera in London, the way in which it spread and was studied, and its impact on the field of epidemiology. Did I do it? Epidemiology? I feel like a epidemiology. I'm an embarrassment. It's a fascinating story. Even if you've heard it before, you may find new facts and details here that were uncovered through expert interviews and map analysis. We hope you enjoy it. This course is part of the PredictionX series. Future courses will examine the process and impacts of prediction throughout history, from ancient Chinese bone-burning ceremonies through modern supercomputer predictions. Follow us at Twitter. Oh, they have a Twitter account. Do you guys want to see the Twitter account? I'm a little bit curious. It's probably fine, right? Like, it's probably okay. It's probably not an absolute dumpster fire, right? Right? Epidemiology? PredictionX project. From 2000 BC to next week's weather, we document and analyze how humans predict future over time, founded by experts around the world. This only has 395 followers? From 2006? Really? 2021. 2024. They've been posting. Look, that surprises me a little bit, actually. I guess 2023, I guess they're not very active. Huh. Opinion Harris of Trump? The prophet of presidential elections is... Follow us at Evil Lair, owned by bleached overfed land seal. That was supposed to be starting at noon, and I just do a bad job of it. That's how this goes. This is a New York Times opinion post from 2024. I'm Trump or Harris, the prophet of predictions. Oh yeah. Oh, you know what? I can't see it. What a shame. How unfortunate for me. All right, next. Guiding questions. Keep the following questions in mind when you're going through the course material. Oh, are these gonna be the questions on the test? I'm gonna give these to you, chat. Let me, What? Okay, well, I'll type them out, I guess. How long does it take to die from cholera? Question mark. How did the population vary as a function of time, e.g., day by day, and space, e.g., house by house or neighborhood by neighborhood, end bracket, around the time of the epidemic, question mark. Let me know if you know the answer to these already. How accurate are the death records in space and time? In space and time? God, the way they word some of this stuff. Did Snow have an agenda other than public health? I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that that's almost guaranteed to be a yes. Nobody has only one agenda. What was the prevailing theory of disease in 1854? All right, guys, you better remember these fucking questions. They're important. How long does it take to die of cholera? A period of time. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Allegedly, sometime. In space and time depends on if you have a TARDIS. Yeah, I know, right? Our golden threads. Okay. Golden threads, connections across PredictionX. A wide range of topics covered in the overall PredictionX project are connected ideologically by a series of concepts we call golden threads. You'll see icons for these ideas throughout the course, where they will connect a particular idea to a larger theme. The Jon Snow mini-course focuses on 3 golden threads in particular: the observation theory cycle, cognitive bias, and objective analysis, as described below. The observation slash theory cycle. Yeah, my keyboard, yes, I apologize. My keyboard, well, I'm kind of sorry. I'm not that sorry. My keyboard is very loud. It is not a mechanical keyboard. It is just an obnoxiously loud regular keyboard. Why is it like that? I don't know. How long have I had it? A decade? It's a very old keyboard. It's not so old that it's gray. I'll give it that much. I do have another keyboard I could plug in, but that's not as much fun as my loud, obnoxious doxing keyboard. A period, so a week. Very funny. The cycle icon refers to humans' unceasing endeavor to create theories that explain the patterns they observe around them. Can we at least acknowledge that sometimes humans just make up patterns where there aren't any? Like, we kind of force patterns sometimes a little bit. Sometimes individuals who create the theories also seek to test them, but other times they love their theories so much that they leave the testing to future generations. Sure. Key questions. How do human beings formalize the pattern that we see in our observations? I'm assuming this is going to be something to do with, like, hypotheses and scientific theory testing. Cognitive bias. Sometimes the incredible complex human mind can make equally complex errors. That's putting it nicely. Sometimes we're just dumb fucks. It do be like that. We do be like that sometimes. Sometimes we're just dumb. Like, that's okay. The song playing now is Sunny from Animal Crossing 1 PM. We also did Kirby's Epic Yarn Apartment 102 and Paper Mario. Sometimes the incredible complex human mind can make equally complex errors. I feel like somebody needs to hold on to that and put that in their back pocket, so when somebody says something really stupid, you just respond with that phrase. That'd be a good one. By using their brains, by using their brains, unless they are flurf, they don't have brains. Like, that is the issue, isn't it? That is the issue. Cognitive bias. A genius when dumb is also a genius dumb. We pay attention to irrelevant details. We see patterns where they don't exist. We even reject information that contradicts our beliefs. Do we now? Cognitive bias are the ways in which our mental shortcuts and... What? Heuristics? Is that heuristics? I can't read. Is this word heuristics? I think it is. Yeah, strategies based on the rules to generate optimal decisions. I'm brain. When you see aliens, when you see the tipped scales icon, the tipped scales icon, tepig? You see the tipped scales icon, nearby material will point out the thought patterns that led us to less accurate predictions, including overgeneralization, confirmation bias, illusions of control, and the gambler's fallacy. Hey! Key questions. When does human nature get in the way of making an accurate prediction or recognizing a bad one? How has bias shaped our predictions and our response to them? Listen, if you want to talk about a really bad bias in relation to, like, disease and medicine, gender bias. There's a really, really bad gender bias in medicine that is relating to, like, medical testing as well as, like, the way things are diagnosed, and it's very, very gender lilted towards men. So that's a problem, and it'll be a long time before, like, women catch up. For example, a lot of you will know the general signs of, like, a heart attack, but those are the general signs of a heart attack for a man, not for women. The general signs of a heart attack for women are different. And there's a decent chance that a lot of people don't even know that they're different. Same with a stroke. The signs are different depending on whether you're a man or a woman. I don't think Cheshire's brain wants to read today or forever. That matter. Yeah, listen, okay? Yeah, you may have been able to find out if you've been following through this series why I did badly at school. You may have noticed, you may have been able to pick up about why I'm not very good in institutionalized education systems. What are the signs for women? I don't know if I know them off the top of my head. I have to actually double check. It's been a while. Signs of a heart attack in men and signs of a heart attack in women. I'm gonna pull up both. Because I really don't want to get it wrong and tell you the wrong thing. Because that would be really, really, really bad. Alright, so we've got heart attack symptoms. Symptoms. Symptoms of a heart attack vary. Some people have mild symptoms, others have severe symptoms. Some people have no symptoms. Common heart attack symptoms. Chest pain that may feel like pressure or tightness, pain, squeezing or aching, pain or discomfort that spreads into the shoulder, arm, back, neck, jaw, teeth, or sometimes the upper belly, cold sweat, fatigue, heartburn or indigestion, lightheadedness, sudden dizziness, nausea, short of breath. Women may have atypical symptoms. So if we switch over to women, so here's the thing. Women may have atypical symptoms. Are they atypical, or are they typical for women and just not typical for men? You see the language problems here. You see what I'm talking about? You see what I mean? You see what I'm saying? Alright, women. Uncomfortable pressure, squeezing, fullness or pain at the center of your chest. It may last more than a few minutes. Pain or discomfort in arms, one or both, back, neck, jaw, stomach. It doesn't specify like the left arm, which tends to be the one that's specified for men. shortness of breath with or without chest discomfort, breaking out in cold sweat, nausea, and lightheadedness. As with men, most women's heart attacks symptom is chest pain or discomfort. Some women having a heart attack describe upper back pressure that feels like squeezing or a rope being tied around them. Women may have other symptoms that are typically less associated with a heart attack, such as anxiety, short of breath, upset stomach, pain in the shoulder, back, or arm, unusual tiredness, and weakness. So don't get it wrong. The symptoms can be similar, but they are not necessarily the same. So keep an eye out for that shit. Bias. Objective analysis. When you see the microscope icon, a nearby material will delve into objective measurements of a prediction's accuracy, such as reliability, convergence, and quantified uncertainty. What can we do to validate a prediction or theory? How do we measure accuracy? This counts as another tangent. Yeah, probably. Other golden threads. There are also 4 more golden threads that will play an important part in the other PredictionX courses. They are our need to know. Human beings have an inherent curiosity about future events. We want to know, we need to know what's going to happen to us, to our homes and our loved ones, to our whole world as a whole. This can drive us to learn more about our universe, but it can also leave us open to manipulation by others. When you see the crystal ball mind icon, 7 of you know why I'm laughing about this already. A crystal ball mind icon? Obsessed without a crystal ball? When you see the crystal ball mind icon, nearby material will illuminate humans' fascination with the future in the way in which we react to predictions. Oh, good. I could be wrong, but somebody's doing some work outside on some concrete. Where does our desire to know the future come from? How do we react to predictions? The hidden nature of our universe. Every prediction is made in context. Whether this context is our planet's climate, an economic market, the orbit of comets, our own social networks, the rules of the systems are at the heart of our ability to understand them. The nature of our universe is at the very heart of prediction. Okay. When you see the cracked eye icon, that's what that is. It's a cracked eyeball. Are we getting into some Cthulhu shit? What the hell? Nearby material will deal with concepts such as free will, determinism, and probability, natural or supernatural laws, the invisible hand of the market, and the root source of uncertainty. That's a lot of things! That's a pretty... I might go out on a limb and call that more than one concept. But okay, I guess. This is quite the syllabus. Brother! Philosophy is just... elder evils. What properties of our universe make it possible to predict the future? What makes it difficult to predict the future? Because we experience time well, I guess it wouldn't be a prediction if you didn't experience time in a linear fashion. If you experienced all of time all at once, you wouldn't be predicting what was going to happen, you would already be aware of what was happening. I take it back. Clearly the sound of a goblin mining accident. They're fine. They're fine. They have protocol for this. Who's making the prediction? Every culture agrees that predictions are best made by experts. Do they? You know, I'll give you. You know what? I'm not gonna criticize this. This is fine because generally the culture on a whole will agree. It's just niches and groups and individuals within a culture that will be annoying pieces of shit that nobody likes. However, different traditions agree on what makes one an expert. This is also true. In fact, there are different credentials, even within Canada, between provinces, depending on what you're studying and what you're supposed to be an expert in. So if you have a license to do something in one province, you don't necessarily have a license to do it in another one. That's actually one of the issues that we have with, you know how Canada has like an issue about not having enough doctors and nurses? That's one of the issues, is that we don't have like a through line for doctors and nurses to easily move around to different provinces. Go check out Todd Maffin if you're in the healthcare industry and you want to move to Canada. This is a lot to read to just to get to a cholera outbreak. I know, right? Some prognosticators, I learned that word a couple of times ago, are highly trained, while others are chosen or cursed by the gods. Cassandra, anyone? Many traditions require both divine blessing and worldly preparation. When you see the yin-yang icon, nearby material will explore prediction as an intuitive or teachable process. And investigate the nature of both diviners and those who interpret their predictions. Key questions. Why are certain individuals uniquely qualified to make certain predictions? I guess it depends on the context. Subjective analysis. To be widely accepted, predictions must be more than accurate, they must be appealing. I guess. Human beings judge predictions on more than just an objective basis. We barely judge them based on an objective basis. We apply skepticism. Do we? Maybe I'm too cynical today. Question believability and look for the utility value in the things we hear. Do we? Is that something we do? I think this is being nice to us. When you see the heart and mind icon, nearby material will speak to our emotional evaluation of predictions and the things that human beings choose to value. Key questions. How do human beings choose which predictions to value? What determines how strongly we act on a prediction? I mean, I feel like this is very, like, depends on the context. Who are you asking about? Human beings in totality? It seems like an absurdist question, almost. Get out of here. Alright. Alyssa Goodman, Robert Wheeler Wilson Professor of Applied Astronomy and founding director of Initiative in Innovating Computing at Harvard University, research associate of the Smithsonian Institute, and Edward Francis and Shirley B. Daniels Fellow of Radcliffe Institute. Alyssa Goodman is a physicist by training. MIT. I think that's a science. I think SCB is a science bachelor's. MIT 1984, PhD Harvard 1989. But an artist at heart. Aren't we all? She combines her passion for science and art with interests in computing, archaeology, and the history of science and new technologies in her work, which spans astrophysics, data visualization, and new approaches to STEM education. She was named Scientist of the Year by Harvard Foundation in 2015. The PredictionX effort began during Goodman's sabbatical as a scholar in residence at the WGBH Media Organization in Boston and crystallized into the highly collaborative project you see today when Harvard X committed to creating reusable modular online multimedia content. Dr. Rosalind Stanwell-Smith, Honorary Senior Lecturer at the Center for History in Public Health, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and Honorary Fellow of the Royal Society for Public Health. Doctor? How come this doesn't say doctor? This one doesn't say either. Why do these not say doctor and PhD? Wasn't that a thing we were listening? Oh, that wasn't Harvard's rule. That was Waterloo University's rule that was just like, hey, use people's fucking honorifics when you're writing about them. if you're publishing for the university. That was the thing that what's his dick got super duper mad at. Metatron. If we scroll into a man and it uses his doctor in front of his name, I'm gonna be pissed. Oh no, it doesn't. It just says Don. Alright, cool. Ross holds a degree in medicine, public health, obstetrics, that's obstetrics, and yeah, gynecology. Okay. And organizational behavior. Her career includes direct academic and national appointments in clinical specialties, public health, and epidemiology. I did it. And she is a past resident of the section for epidemiology and public health at the Royal Society of Medicine. She is currently a public health advisor to water companies. Ew, that's interesting. I wonder if this is still current and if it's in the United States, because, like, that's going to shit right now. I heard something about new policies being brought forward about getting rid of the fluoride in the water because they're stupid. They did that out west in Canada. They talked about doing that, and then everybody was like, can we fucking not? And they just, like, undid that this year. Anyway. Deputy editor of the Journal of Perspectives in Public Health and a London professional tourist guide. Oh, interesting. Specializing in medical tours and, of course, Dr. Snow. While leading courses on infectious disease epidemiology, I'm gonna be stumbling over that word for the rest of time. In the early 1990s, she founded the John Snow Society, which she and colleagues built up to have an international membership and popular annual lecture. She holds a diploma in the history of medicine, and her dissertation was awarded the Maccabeen Prize from the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries. The what? Excuse me? The Worshipful Society of Apothecaries? What is this? The Society of Apothecaries is a livery company of the City of London. It derives its membership from the medical and pharmacy professions. The city's medieval trade guilds. What the fuck? The society's roots are with the Grocers' Company in the 12th century, gaining independence as the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries in 1617? This is Illuminati shit! What the fuck? How do you join? Annual City of London Sheep Drive? Okay, well, this is literally apothecaries.org. So, you know, I'm also kind of curious about what the John Snow Society is. Welcome to the John Snow Society. The John Snow Society aims to promote the life work of Dr. John Snow, a pioneer of modern epidemiological method and celebrated anesthesiast. This is a fan club. Okay. Do you guys want the link to the fan club? Apothecary is just another word for pharmacy at this point. Yeah, a pharmacist. Yeah, yes. To a degree. The annual sheep drive. You'll need a sheep. Damn it. Gotta go steal one from Crafty Keela. Fan of whom? Dr. John Snow. Okay, Dr. Don Goldman, Chief Medical and Scientific Officer for the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, the IHI. I would like to point out that some of these might be a little bit out of date. because I don't know when the last time this was updated, so some of these people may no longer be in the positions that they're in due to, like, retirement or whatever the fuck, or moving around to do different shit. I don't know. Professor of Immunology and Infectious Disease and Epidemiology at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health Clinical, and Professor of Pediatrics at Harvard Medical School. At the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, IHI, Don supports content leads in identifying innovative approaches and cutting-edge developments, assists expert faculty in areas of strategic focus, as well as strengthens ties between the organization and the health services research and academic communities. He also serves as senior lead for the IHI Fellowship Program and continues to train and mentor emerging investors at Boston Children's Hospital. A noted scholar and professor at Harvard, he brings a unique perspective, having performed studies across the entire continuum of translational research, bench science, vaccine development, infectious disease, epidemiology. Oh, take a drink every time I struggle to pronounce epidemiology. I can pronounce it easier if I'm not looking at the word. Good lord. Novel methods for early detection of outbreaks, risk adjustment, and effectiveness research. Clinical trials, including cluster randomized trials of QI interventions. And implementation research, including quasi-experimental methods and real-time context-sensitive mixed methods evaluation. He has more than 230 peer-reviewed publications, many in high-impact journals, and numerous commentaries. Just say the word. I can't just say the word. Life is hard. This survey is optional. Welcome to the online course from Harvard. For us to offer the best course experience possible, we'd like to ask you to answer a few questions about yourself. You don't get to know anything about me. Normally, I would be fine with something like that, but I'm not going to. And I'm not going to because I don't want to give the United States any of my information. Hey, we got a video. This video gives a broad overview of the situation in Soho that led to Jon Snow's investigation of the 1854 cholera outbreak there. Much more information about the famous ghost map you'll see in the video, where the black bars mark each death, is in... You'll see in this... Oh, the ghost map you'll see in this video where the black bars mark each death is in the map section of this course. Detail on Snow's analysis and conversations with experts are also on offer. See the menu at left. There's nothing there. As well as a comprehensive timeline of the Broad Street cholera outbreak and Snow's investigation. I wonder if I learned about this in school. I kind of get a vibe that I think I might have heard about this, and like I might have had like a lecture on it, but whatever. Spooky music.
In 1854, cholera struck the city of London. Over 600 people died in just a few weeks. Physician Jon Snow is often credited with discovering that cholera is a waterborne disease, and with ending the 1854 epidemic by removing the handle from the contaminated Broad Street pump. The full story is much more interesting.
Ooh, fancy graphics.
So I've been reading about the John Snow pub for years. There it is. Look at that. Right here on what used to be Broad Street is this fine-looking pub. There's this
This guy got a pub? What the fuck? Maybe one day I'll have a pub. Join my Kickstarter.
inauspicious sign that says here, the red granite curbstone over there marks the site of the historic Broad Street pump associated with Dr. John Snow's discovery in 1854 that cholera is conveyed by water. So that's a really simple summary of the whole John Snow story. And to give you just an overview, here's the story. So it's 1854, it's really hot in the end of the summer in London. We're here in Soho, which was a very crowded neighborhood full of tenements with people not of a lot of means, and there were a lot of people crammed into these buildings. You know, many, many people to an apartment, and it's hot and it's sweaty. And the part that you can't imagine looking right now, because it's still pretty crowded, it's not that hot, but it's still pretty.
I mean, does anybody see any kind of like parallel to people right now in the United States not being able to afford living, like spread out living situations, and you've got like college age and like a little bit older people in their 30s and younger basically all living in like 3 or 4 people to an apartment? I do have the debate pub. This is true. That's true. But I meant like an actual building and an actual pub. That'd be great. I'd love to run a pub.
Pretty crowded. Here, the street now is completely clean. We see street sweeping vehicles, we see drainage in the streets, we have sewers. None of that was true in 1854. Instead,
I would not call that completely clean, but sure.
the people who lived in these buildings, some of them had cesspools in these little front courtyards, and they would take their human waste and other waste and just kind of throw it out the window into the cesspool or bring it down to the cesspool. And then it would drain wherever it drained. And the street, whoa, was not something that you could easily walk on and keep your feet clean. Wow, that's slippery and disgusting. And so people were used to this kind of somewhat disgusting.
She was literally just saying it's completely clean now. All right.
Ambiance. And people thought that when there were terrible outbreaks of disease, especially cholera, that it was caused by the...
Did you guys see the kid in the corner? I'm putting it back. We stand this kid in the corner.
somewhat disgusting ambiance. And people
Bottom
thought
right.
that when there were terrible outbreaks of disease, especially cholera, that it was caused by the very poisonous air, this miasma that they called it. And the smell from all the poo and all the animal waste was pretty horrible, and it was a pretty sensible theory to think that that could be causing disease. But John Snow, who lived not far from here, we'll go there later, was a physician in London who was convinced that cholera in particular was a waterborne disease. It was not carried in this smelly air. And what happened here on this spot in 1854 was that there was a baby who lived at number 40 Broad Street, which would have been just about here, baby Lewis, who came down with some sort of terrible disease that caused really terrible diarrhea. And I think pretty quickly people realized that it was cholera and that there was going to be another outbreak of this very terrible disease. And people started dying. All right, so what happens? What happened
Hello, welcome.
was the waste from baby Lewis and other people who became ill with the cholera, so human fecal matter mixed with the water supply that was in a relatively shallow well, I believe about 20 feet down under the street right here. And then the cholera bacteria began to multiply, and then people would ingest the water, which provides the human intestine the place where the bacteria multiply best. They need a host like that. So anyway, when people ingest this contaminated water, they come down with cholera, from which you die in hours to days. And John Snow...
All right, there's the answer for how long does it take for cholera to kill you? And it's hours to days, I guess.
Who really was looking for a place where he could, unfortunate circumstances as they were, have a very concentrated outbreak of cholera where he could study the origins of the outbreak, was interested in helping the people, but also interested immediately in collecting information about what was going to happen in this outbreak. So he would have come over here to this neighborhood and
terrible diarrhea as opposed to really fun diarrhea. Yeah, definitely. Fun fact, the White House was downstream from a community cesspool, so several American presidents got cholera. Oh, interesting. Color me unsurprised that the White House is downstream from a community cesspool. That just seems very on point. It seems a little on the nose.
Started canvassing all the people around here to see who was dying and who needed help and what they had done to possibly ingest water from the various water supplies in the area. And right here, at a location right near this red curbstone, was a source of what was apparently some very clean tasting, sweet tasting actually, water for drinking. Right here, it's called the Broad Street Pump. And it turned out, as he started...
I would be immensely concerned if my water suddenly tasted different. If my water was suddenly sweet tasting, or if I'm at my house and water tastes one way and I go to my mom's house and the water tasted different, I would probably have concerns. I would be concerned. It makes sense from city to city. If I go from where I live now, I'm in Cambridge. If I go from Cambridge and I go to Guelph water tastes different than Cambridge water does. Or if I go to Toronto tastes different, right? Those are different, the water will taste different. But that's for a various number of reasons that make sense, not within the same city. Fucking Flint, Michigan is still fucked. It is the year of our Lord 2025, and Flint, Michigan is still just railed in the ass. It still has not recovered. Hello, welcome. We're talking about cholera.
Started canvassing the neighborhood that he realized that most of the people who had fallen ill and who were continuing to fall ill had drunk water from this particular pump. So there were other water pumps in the neighborhood, and one of the things that we'll see later is that in the end, when he put all his data together and he made a map, he had to show that this pump, by walking, was the closest to almost all of the people who eventually died, 600-something people who died in the epidemic. And so even though there are other pumps that are geographically potentially nearer to those people, this one tasted good and was close to the people who died by walking.
Cholera, delicious. Don't tell Nestle about this.
So in epidemiology today, it's known that one way to really make your case is to have exceptions to the rule. So people who should have died, who didn't die, and then people who did die for no apparent reason. And so John Snow in his work actually found both of those kinds of exceptions. And so one case is what people sometimes refer to as the people who were saved by the beer. And so these were the brewery workers who worked a few blocks from here and drank mostly beer, and so had a clean supply of things to drink. And the other case was the workhouse that was near here. And these were the most indigent, potentially people in the poorest of health. And so why did they live? They systematically survived this epidemic. And part of the reason, the main and most important reason, is that the workhouse had a well, had its own source of clean drinking water. So there are the exceptions of people who should have died and didn't die. And then what happened was he also found out about a family who would bring water to a member of that family who had moved far, a couple miles outside of this neighborhood. And they brought her some water, an elderly aunt, and she and her niece drank it. And those people both died. So to us,
some of this art is crazy.
Looking at modern epidemiological methods, John Snow had plenty of evidence to say that this water from this well contained the contaminant that caused the disease. But it still took actually many years until the locals believed his story.
It's actually kind of cool when you can deduce information without necessarily having all the tools. So we've kind of found this throughout PredictionX, that there are discoveries, I guess, or predictions or information that's been gathered without using, let alone modern technology, but even complicated, I don't know, complicated is the wrong word. Like, he's not using a microscope and looking at the bacteria, right? To be like, oh, let me just test strip this. He's not using a pH test strips, right? He's not using stuff like that to figure out. He's not looking at people's blood. He's not doing autopsies to find out what killed them. He is just tracking the available information that he has, dotting it on a map, and deducing what the hell is going on, right? And I just, like, I think it's interesting that, like, even barring more modern methods, you can still do stuff like that, which tells me that there's stuff now going on that because we don't have every method, we don't have every tool. We'll invent new things in the future. So it means that we're still doing that sort of deductive tracking the information and then regurgitating it and spitting out different possibilities. And that's one of the reasons, like, AI is kind of AI. Machine learning is viable and useful. It's one of the places it belongs, and it's like just being able to crunch all of that data at a faster rate, at a higher speed than we would be able to. So it makes it's interesting to me because it's like, okay, so what does that mean, like, for us now? Does it mean, like, shit's going on? There's gonna be, like, inventions are still happening. So what's the next one gonna be? And what's gonna get looked back on and be like, wow, how did they figure that out? I don't know. I won't be alive to find out, but kind of cool, I guess.
And another thing that we should mention is that Jon Snow did not collect all this data himself. If you look around the street here, you'll see that this is a very busy neighborhood with lots and lots of people, and I think it was even busier in 1854. But it was a small, contained community, and there were people, for example, like the curate, Henry Whitehead, who was a local, who kind of knew everybody. And so Jon Snow worked with Whitehead and with other people in the area to really canvass the information and collect the kind of sociological, demographic information that he needed to know who lived where, when they died, where they likely got their water, who they talked to, who they came in contact with, all kinds of other details about their personal lives. And so that kind of human data collection in this tightly knit community was also really, really important.
No! There's something amusing about there just being a no, so it's just snug. Yeah, internet? Yeah, the internet was a pretty big thing. Alright, the details of Jon Snow's investigation. Yahoo! Let's get our vibe on. I mean, I'll be interested to see, like, I think the internet is gonna go through its, like, we've probably seen, like, the height of its activity, and it's gonna probably start going down. That doesn't mean it's gonna see, like, I'm expecting it to see less users, I guess, to a degree, at least from a social standpoint. Like, YouTube is probably on getting to the end of its life, unless something else happens. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. What do I know? Nothing. I don't know nothing. That's why we're here learning about predictions. The details of Jon Snow's investigation. Jon Snow, 1813 to 1858, was a London physician who first became famous for his work with anesthesia. That's, okay, fun fact about humans. We invented dentistry and surgery before we invented anesthesia. Humans are fucking cracked, dude. We're like, listen, we're gonna lop your arm off. Don't worry about it. Oh, no, hold on. We're gonna cut you open. We're gonna take out this part that's causing problems and we're gonna sew you right back up. Don't worry about it. Bite down on this. Hold on, your wisdom teeth are killing you? Hold up, open your mouth. We're gonna fucking rip your teeth out. You'll be fine. Oh, I love humans, man. They're like, here, drink some beer, you'll be fine. Have some distilled fruit, you'll be good. That's one of my favorite fun facts about humans. Fucking inventing surgery before anesthesia is, like, peak human behavior. Alright, Snow was so well known for his expertise that he personally gave chloroform to Queen Victoria when she gave birth to two of her children. Bro! I guess that was probably pretty risky, right? Like, if something went wrong. Snow was also a strong opponent of the miasma theory of disease, which purports that diseases are caused by contaminated noxious air. Well, I mean, I guess, like, some of them can be. 19th century London was a filthy place. Oh, tell me how you really feel. Human waste collected indoors in chamber pots, which were emptied into fetid underground cesspools. When the cesspools were cleaned out, their content was, at best, dumped into Thames, or at worst, I believe is a river, or at worst just shoveled into the street. If we imagine the oppressive smell this overabundance of raw waste caused, it's easy to see why the miasma theory made sense to 19th century public health experts. How could one argue against such horrific air being the cause of disease? Pungent, I would imagine, would be a good word for that. One of the most deadly diseases afflicting... Oh. There's another mining accident. One of the most deadly... Well, that one's inside my house now. Alright, that's just probably fine. Probably fine. Thames River is pronounced Thames. Is that true? Is it pronounced Thames? Are you lying to me? Vibe-based germ theory. Smell-based germ theory. One of the most deadly diseases afflicting 19th century Londoners was cholera. Those afflicted with cholera lose most of their bodily fluid via diarrhea and often die within a day. Most cholera cases in London were epidemic, part of a widespread outbreak of disease at a specific time, not endemic due to a more or less constant level of disease in a population. Before 1854, London had seen two major outbreaks of cholera, one in 1831 to 32, which killed over 6,000 people, and another in 1848 to 1849, which killed over 14. Ow, no, I lost my spot. This is your fault. It ain't Thames, it's Thames. What? It's pronounced Thames. Thames? 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 It's a TH. Thames or Thames, depending on which part of England you're in. English is the worst. Hello, welcome. We're learning about cholera, kind of. By the late 1840s, after more than a decade as a physician, Snow was convinced that miasma was not the cause of cholera. Instead, Snow believed that cholera was transmitted through water. In 1849, he published a pamphlet entitled On the Mode of Communication in Cholera. Is this gonna be... Oh, here you go. I'll give you guys the link. Here you go. Therein he gives two first-hand accounts and a few second-hand accounts of cholera outbreaks being point source outbreaks, where disease is spread through a single source to its victims. Popularized accounts often state that Snow, quote, thought it was tainted water all along, end quote. However, when On the Mode of Communication in Cholera was published in 1849, Snow was certain that miasma was the wrong explanation, but had not yet singled out water as the main source of cholera transmission. The Great Experiment. Still searching for the true nature of cholera spread in the 1850s, Snow saw an opportunity for a great experiment. When, oh, you gotta love it when there's clearly like a problem and people are dying and some fucking opportunist shows up and is like, wait a minute, hold up. Hold my beer. For a great experiment, when in 1852, the Lambeth Water Company, tell me how I'm pronouncing that wrong, started supplying non-sewage contaminated water to its consumers, while the Southwark and Vauxhall Company, I spoke too soon, continued to pipe in sewage contaminated water from Thames. I'm gonna call it Thames just to maybe all the wrong. Well, there were more than just two water companies in London. The overlap of the Lambeth and South Wark and Vauxhall territories would give Snow the unusual opportunity to directly compare cholera rates in sub-districts served simultaneously by a suspect and non-suspect water supplier. Nothing would be different about the comparable populations, environs, or demographics. The only difference in the population would be which water they drank. During cholera outbreaks in November of 1853 and August of 1854, Snow used both mortality data from the General Register Office under the leadership of William Farr and his own shoe leather epidemiology example, going door to door to collect information to track where cholera victims were getting their water. Snow's analysis seemed conclusive. Sub-districts served by both Lambeth and South Wark and Vauxhall both had cholera. Sub-districts only served by South Wark and Vauxhall had cholera, and sub-districts served only by Lambeth did not have cholera. In early September 1854, while John Snow was still very busy with his Lambeth versus South Wark and Vauxhall experiment, a localized cholera outbreak occurred in the Golden Square area within the Soho district of London. John Snow lived just a few blocks from... The heater got turned on. I can smell it. I think our furnace is on. You pronounced demographics correctly. Yay! Yay! Woo! Jon Snow investigating people becoming diarrhea zombies. Thames with a silent H and a Z sound at the end, according to Cambridge dictionaries. Thames. Don't ask Chesh how Penistone is pronounced. Peniston? I don't know. Stop. Hey, Low Energy, how was your workout? Jon Snow died in 1858. Why he died? I don't know. Outlaw Jon Snow. Jon Snow. I guess I should put doctor, because if I don't put doctor, it's gonna give me the stupid fucking... Okay, here's his Wikipedia. Will it tell us how he died? How old was he? I can't do math. 1858 minus 1813. He was only 45. Why did he die? Died. Oh, the age is right there. I didn't have to look it up. Ah, fucking whatever. 1832. Treated many victims of disease. Eventually, he adjusted to life characterized by abstinence. Signing the abstinence pledge in 1835. Oh, okay. It was a vegetarian. Oh, try to drink only distilled water. Interesting. How did he die? Cholera, blah, 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 blah. Political controversy. After the cholera outbreak had subsided, government officials replaced the Broad Street pump handle. They had responded only to the urgent threat of posed to the population, and afterward they rejected Snow's theory. To accept his proposal would have meant indirectly accepting the fecal-oral route to disease transmission, which was too unpleasant for most of the public to contemplate. It wasn't until 1866 that William Farr, one of Snow's chief opponents, realized the validity of his diagnosis while investigating another outbreak of cholera at Bromble by Bow, and issued immediate orders that unboiled water was not to be drunk. Farr denied Snow's explanation of how exactly the contaminated water spread cholera, although he did accept that water had a role in the spread of the illness. In fact, some of the statistical data that Farr collected helped promote Jon Snow's views. Public health officials recognized the political struggles in which reformers have often become entangled. During the annual pump handle lecture in England, members of the Jon Snow Society removed and replaced a pump handle to symbolize the continuing changes in public health. Interesting. But how did he die? Member of the temperance movement? God, I'm falling down a hole. How did he die? Oh, he suffered from a stroke. Snow suffered from a stroke while working in his London office on the 10th of June in 1858. He was 45 years old at the time. He never recovered, dying 6 days later on June 16th, 1858. And he was buried in Brompton Cemetery. It has been speculated that his premature death may have been related to his frequent exposure and experimentation with anesthetic gases, which is now known to have numerous adverse health effects. Snow administered and experimented with either chloroform, ethyl nitrate, carbon dysfuelide, benzene, bromoform, ethyl bromide, and dichlorothane during his lifetime. There you go. Now you know. That's how he died. Donate to Wikipedia. No! You can't make me. Okay. Where were we? In early September of 18... The Soho District. Okay. Jon Snow lived just a few blocks from the Golden Square, and he saw the outbreak's rapid escalation as an opportunity to study the spread of cholera while treating its victims. Given Snow's suspicion that cholera was waterborne, he began investigating the outbreak in the context of victims' water supply. Snow immediately suspected that the Broad Street pump water was contaminated and thus the most likely source of the outbreak. Snow knew that the water from the Broad Street pump was known in the area for its purity and sweet taste, making it a popular water supply. Indeed, Snow's initial inspection of the water during the outbreak showed it to be clear and lacking in the visible impurities that other nearby pumps had. The follow-up. During the tumult of the first few days of the 1854 Golden Square outbreak, Snow found that in every case where information about the victim's source of water was available, the water consumed had come from the Broad Street pump. On September 7th, Snow presented his findings to the Board of Governors and Directors of the Poor, who the next day ordered the removal of the pump's handle. At least they did something, like, right away. For most of September 1854, Snow still focused his work primarily on his Great Experiment Water Company comparison. It was not until about a month later in October that Snow began a more in-depth analysis of Golden Square Broad Street pump outbreak. Snow began carefully canvassing the neighborhood, talking to as many people as he could about their water drinking habits. In order to help surmise his findings to the broader audience, in December of 1854, Snow created his famous map illustrating the proximity of cholera deaths to various water pumps. Neat. Months later, Snow was still critically aided. The word "still" isn't there. Fucking. Months later, still. There we go. Snow was critically aided by the local curate Henry Whitehead, who knew the area well and had been ministering to the sick during the outbreak. Snow and Whitehead met when they were both part of the St. James Cholera Inquiry Committee. Whitehead was instrumental in helping Snow track down information both by finding those who had fled and also providing information about those who had died. Whitehead, who had initially believed in the miasma theory and thought he would find evidence proving Snow wrong, instead came to believe Snow and defended the water-based theory of cholera transmission in his final report to the Cholera Inquiry Committee in 1855. Reading is hard. the evidence. Henry Whitehead, clearly a secret magician. Henry Whitehead is obviously just Rasputin. I don't know what you're talking about. Beer saved the population. Beer did help save a portion of the population, yeah. So what was the convincing evidence? First and foremost, just as Snow had discovered during his initial inquiries, in every case where he could identify where the afflicted got their water, it had come from the Broad Street pump. Importantly, this included the example of Susanna Ellie, I don't know, who lived about 4 miles away from Hampstead. Miss Fuck You had water from the Broad Street brought to her by her relatives because she liked its taste. Cholera, delicious. She was the only person in Hampstead to die of cholera during the 1854 Golden Square epidemic. Snow also found examples of people who lived very near the Broad Street pump who did not contract cholera, 2 areas with large concentrations of non-victims. Again, you see the map, where at the Lion Brewery on Broad Street and the Poland Street Workhouse, using his waterborne theory of cholera contraction, Snow could easily explain why most individuals associated at these locations did not get sick, despite being located right in the heart of the epidemic. The brewery had its own pump on site, and brewery workers were given a free allotment of beer. Why don't we still do that? That might be against the rules now. I don't know. Don't minimize the dangers of cholera. Like and share the stream instead. Ayy! Bracket, whose boiling process killed the cholera bacteria? Yeah. And bracket. The workhouse also had its own pump on site, so very few residents drank water from the Broad Street pump. And what about patient 0? Where did the Broad Street pump outbreak begin? Henry Whitehead discovered that the Lewis family at 40 Broad Street had disposed of their sick baby's waste in a cesspool that leaked into the water that fed the Broad Street pump. Everyone died because of a baby. Why do we think babies are so great again? Whitehead and Snow determined that baby Francis Lewis was the first case of cholera in Soho during this epidemic, and they concluded that the sick baby's excrement was the source of the Broad Street pump's water contamination. The final report of the Cholera Inquiry Committee agreed with Snow and Whitehead that the Broad Street outbreak, quote, was in some manner attributable to the use of the impure water in the well in Broad Street, end quote. However, they stopped short of accepting Snow's entire theory and still left open room for miasma interpretation of the outbreak. The pump was returned to Broad Street on September 26, 1855. As an epilogue, Snow's theory would gain posthumous widespread acceptance when William Farr published a monograph about a cholera outbreak in 1866. As a prominent statistician, fuck you, I know that word, in an importation position, Farr was able to supply a large amount of evidence and public credibility in support of the theory that cholera was spread by water. Whoo! Why are we reading about cholera? Because it is part of the PredictionX Harvard series about learning about predictions and how predictions are made and developed across history throughout the world. Because I'm collecting free educational certificates like they're Pokemon cards. The diaper cesspool is a horrible thought. The horrible part about that is that it's not even just diapers, it's just everything. In the harem in my mind, Chesh's 7 of 7, free to come and go. Can we watch a vid about this with stops to talk? Yeah, we stop and chill. I have to give my brain a break. I did really good. Listen, everybody notices every single word I mispronounce and read incorrectly and flub over, because sometimes I just flub over normal words and I slur through something. But nobody ever counts the number of words I get correct and how many paragraphs I just read out loud perfectly on a single take This is single take sight reading, motherfuckers. I didn't read this ahead of time. God, I get no respect. Footnotes. Alright, footnote 1. Note that the germ theory of disease was not established when Snow was alive, and thus Snow only believed that the water itself was transmitting disease, not microorganisms as we know today. Footnote 2. Legislation had been passed that decreed all water in London had to be supplied from areas on the, what did we say, T-E-M-Z? Thames? Thames? Not near sewage, but companies had a deadline of August 1855 to comply. In 1853, Lambeth had already switched, but Southwark and Vauxhall had not. That's interesting. Footnote 3. For reference, please see Table 6 on the mode of communication of cholera. Footnote 4. An important note during these first few days of the outbreak. Snow did not really do extensive data collection. Most of the detailed data collection he did was after the disease subsided. I guess that makes sense. This is an important distinction from some popular literature that implies Snow effectively did detective work during the outbreak to figure out where the cholera came from. Note 5. Snow and almost no one else at the time could not see, nor did he know. What? Snow and almost no one else at the time could not see, nor did he know to look for the Vibrio cholera bacteria. In an unfortunate irony, the Italian that's anatomy. Anatomist Filippino Passini, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, saw the cholera bacteria with his microscope in 1854, but discovery of the cholera bacteria did not gain widespread knowledge until Robert Koch announced it in 1884. Footnote 6. Well, a dramatic moment, it is likely that at this stage of the epidemic that the removal of the pump handle did not matter. The cholera bacteria in the water supply had likely already died. Footnote 7. He had done some informal inquiries after the September 6 mortality data came out, but in his words, he had done enough sufficient to establish the cause of the outbreak. Footnote 8. Despite some popular misconceptions, the map was not created as a eureka moment in the midst of the epidemic, but instead was methodically created by Snow after the event, based on all known deaths from cholera during the Broad Street outbreak. The map was first presented at a meeting of the Epidemiological Society of London on December 4th, about 4 months after the epidemic. Footnote 9. Workhouses in the 19th century England were placed where the poor, elderly, and infirmed could live in exchange for work. The conditions in them were considered extremely harsh, like a prison. We should stop having prisons that are like that, by the way. Huh. Thames. The water belonging to Tem. Oh. Temtem? Chesh learns English number 27. Fuck you. Just because you're right. Jon Snow myths. All right, well, hold on. We've been live for over an hour. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get some more tea, and I will be right back. It's break time. Stand up, do some squats or something, get some water. I've returned. I got a cookie. This cookie is Canadian made. It's made with real oats. It's an oatmeal cookie. No corn syrup. I read the box while I was waiting for my tea. They're really good Dunkin' cookies. It even says so on the box. Want me to teach you to dance? You don't want me to teach dance. It's been so long. It's been so long since I did any choreography. Either like making the choreography or actually performing. It's been so long. It's been so long. I'm old now. Leave me alone. I got eggplant dip and baby carrots. A real cookie as opposed to a fake cookie. Nom nom nom. Okay. Where were we? Reminds you of Mario. Well, the music you were just listening to was in fact the Wii Photo channel and track 5 from Bartender DS. So, one of them's from Nintendogs that we were listening to earlier. So, I will provide the link to the music again if you are so inclined. I also really just enjoy this guy's playlists. Our playlists are great. One of the playlists is like, you know, songs to do tax fraud to. It's little guys with little brains. It's a good time. Oh, that's fun. Congratulations. It's been 40 years. Yeah. Choreography. Oh my god, can we make that somebody's name? Choreography? God damn it. Alright, back to business. Back to business. Stop distracting me. Yeah, goobers. You're all a bunch of goobers. I hope you know that. Goombas. Alright. Jon Snow myths. The story of Jon Snow and the Broad Street water pump has become so ingrained in history that it has become just that, a story, complete with embellishments. Let's debunk some of the biggest myths one at a time. Ooh, there's a debunk section. Acknowledgements and preparation for this course, and in particular the written summaries, we have consulted with several experts in order to avoid perpetuating the mythological bits of the Jon Snow story. Our sincere gratitude for an illuminating correspondence and invaluable help from Dr. Peter Jonason, curator of the online Jon Snow Archive and Research Companion. Dr. Jonason is the co-author of the definitive Jon Snow biography, Cholera, Chloroform, and the Science of Medicine. How dare you not have something with a CH in as the title, you monsters. And the introduction to his new project, Cholera in St. James, an historian's handiwork? Oh, whatever. It is an amazing resource that goes into much more depth on the history of how the legend of Jon Snow came about. Another excellent source that explores the myths around Jon Snow, and in particular myths around the map, is Carrie S. McLeod's Our Sense of Snow, The Myth of Jon Snow in Medical Geography. I did it. It's fine. Teach me how to dance, or I'll tell the world how to defeat your goblin. No, you can't threaten me like that. No. No. Oh, it's Johansson? Johansson. What did I say? Jonah? Fuck me, dude. Fuck me, dude. Come on. I have such a bad time. It's okay. It's alright. We'll be alright. We'll be okay. Let me shove this in my face hole. I'm hungry. I'm sensitive because I'm hungry. This is New Donk City Cafe from Super Mario. Where H's are truncated. Yeah. Jon Snow did not realize that cholera was spread through the Broad Street pump in a eureka moment. Jon Snow has suspected that cholera was spread via water since 1848 Outbreak, where he gathered enough evidence from localized cases to present his theory in the first edition of On the Mode of Communication of Cholera. If Snow had any eureka moment, it would not have occurred during the Broad Street crisis, but instead a year earlier when he realized the opportunity for the Great Experiment with the Lambeth and Southwark and Vauxhall water companies. In Snow's own words, quote, "As soon as I became acquainted with the situation and extent of the late outbreak of cholera in Broad Street, Golden Square, and the adjoining streets, I suspected some contamination of the water of the much frequented street pump in Broad Street near the end of the Cambridge Street," end quote. Despite popular misconceptions, Snow was not meticulously tracking down cholera cases during the outbreak and realizing, with dramatic music swelling over a Hollywood-style montage, that the Broad Street pump was the source of cholera. Honestly, I think it'd be a way more amusing movie to just have this one dude scrambling around being like, it's this, it's this, it's this, can we not? We can save people, stop doing this, it's this thing, please, for the love of God. Listen to me. That would be a really funny movie. I might be the only person who would like that kind of movie, though. Instead, Snow immediately applied what he had already believed true, cholera was spread through water, to a location he knew well. Snow lived nearby in Soho and knew how popular the Broad Street pump was. As described in detail in our written summary and timeline, Snow did not begin to thoroughly investigate Broad Street. I'm not clicking these things because last time I clicked these things in one of these, it sent me all over the place and I got lost in translation. So I'm not clicking those yet. Snow did not begin to thoroughly investigate the Broad Street cholera deaths on a case-by-case basis until almost a month after the epidemic finished, and did not present his famous map until over 3 months later. The removal of the pump handle did not cause the outbreak to end. The outbreak was already subsiding by the time the handle was removed on September 8th. Snow's own tabulations of the deaths show that the peak number of the deaths was on September 2nd, with a precipitous drop off each subsequent day. The cholera in the Broad Street water supply had already effectively run its course when the pump handle was removed. Jon Snow knew nothing about bacteria or germ theory disease. While Snow had correctly realized that cholera was spread through water, the exact mechanism of how it was transmitted from water to people was unknown to him. This may seem like a pedantic point to make, brackets, since even today people often sometimes say along the lines of cholera spread through water as shorthand to mean the bacteria Vibrio cholera is transmitted to humans through water. And you might hear Jon Snow referred to as one of the founders of germ theory. However, strictly speaking, this was not true. Snow might have helped lay the foundational work for the Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch, and others would do to discover bacteria and establish germ theory, but Snow himself died before these achievements. He might have, had he not had a stroke and died at 45, he might have still been alive to see that. Importantly, without knowledge of bacteria, Snow was not able to provide the definitive proof that it was ingestion of the water that transmitted the bacteria, and thus miasma theory could still be defended by members of the public health community. Ironically, the cholera bacteria was discovered by Filippo Pacini in, again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in 1854. I took one semester of Spanish in grade 11? The same year as the Broad Street outbreak, but knowledge of the cholera bacteria would not become widespread until nearly 30 years later. Jon Snow's theory was not ignored by the health community. First of all, Snow was a very well-established physician, almost a celebrity in the medical community. His work on anesthesia would become so well known that he would personally administer chloroform to Queen Victoria when she gave birth in 1853 and 1857. Snow had written extensively about cholera being waterborne since 1848. He had frequently published articles about cholera in one of the leading medical journals of the time, the London Medical Gazette, and he had presented his findings at the London epidemiological society, where he did not overturn the miasma theory overnight. Well, he did not overturn the miasma theory overnight, which was deeply rooted in public belief. Snow was presenting his findings to a critical and receptive audience even before Broad Street. I propose a new name, Johan's son. His father's is named Nohan, and his mother's daughter's son, since her father was mourning the birth of a daughter with his wife's passing in childbirth. Oh my god, that's so good! Oh, yes! That's so good! I applaud you, Autumn. Quick! Roller stats. That bitch needs stats. Stat. Spanish won't help you with Italian. You know, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how helpful a root language can be when it comes to how to pronounce certain sounds and letters. Take another drink. Louis? Fuck me. Moreover, Snow could not have done his research into either the water companies or Broad Street without the data collected by William Farr's General Registry Office. Despite Farr being a supporter of the miasma theory of disease, he still provided Snow with data necessary to do his studies. A far cry from the popular conception that Snow was some sort of lone wolf or maverick with no support from the public health community. Also, keep in mind that Snow was only able to have his great experiment because laws were passed that required water companies not to get drinking water from sewage-contaminated areas of the Thames. So I have to think about it every time. So the very basic concept of not drinking water contaminated with human waste was common sense. Louis? When formal investigations of Broad Street began, the St. James Cholera Inquiry Committee asked Snow to be part of the group that did interviews in the neighborhood, and they also asked him to prepare a report. In the committee's final report, they wrote, quote, "The committee is unanimously of the opinion that the striking disproportionate mortality in the cholera area, ellipses, was in some manner attributable to the use of the impure water of the well in Broad Street," end quote. While the committee's report did leave open the possibility of the miasma being a contributing factor, the report's statement of the on Broad Street is a clear example of public health community coming out in support of Snow's theory. Why was there such a delay in accepting Snow's work showing that cholera was waterborne? Perhaps the lack of another cholera outbreak in London while Snow was alive meant that there was not enough of an opportunity to demonstrate his ideas. A fourth major cholera outbreak did not hit London until 1866, and during that outbreak, William Farr, using Snow's ideas, gathered conclusive evidence to support the theory of waterborne cholera. Ugh. Yeah, the fact that the United States currently has, like, their head of health ministry, or whatever the hell it's called, is a guy who likes to swim in sewage water is, like, kind of a fucking hit in the face. Bonus video! In this video, we'll take a quick stroll in Soho through the park at Golden Square to the fancy neighborhood on the other side of Regent Street where Jon Snow lived, at his address on Saxville Street. There is now a posh residential building that presents no mention of Snow having lived there. Spooky music!
Wow, I think this is Golden Square. So Jon Snow referred to this as the terrible cholera outbreak in Golden Square. And I think that's the name, or at least it was the name, of this whole neighborhood. But this now is what's actually called Golden Square. Here we are, City of Westminster, Golden Square. I get the sense from what I've read that as you move from that part of Soho...
Did you know that cholera could help you lose weight?
where the Jon Snow pub is, to this direction where Jon Snow actually lived, there's kind of a gradient in how nice the neighborhood was. And so I'm guessing that right here was maybe a little bit nicer than the area right around the pub a few blocks back. But we can get an idea of how densely populated the neighborhood was. This is a map from 1792 to 1799, and you can see Golden Square with pretty much the layout that it has now right here in the middle. And so we'll continue on our walk and go over and find the location where Jon Snow actually lived. But I bet you that he cut diagonally across this park to go over and investigate what was happening while the cholera outbreak was going on.
On one hand, they keep saying that he was investigating the cholera outbreak while it was going on. On the other hand, he's like, a lot of his work was done investigating after the cholera outbreak had started to subside. So can you guys, I'm getting a little bit of mixed messages here.
Wow, this is a very fancy neighborhood now where Jon Snow lived. That's the main street in this part of London, Regent Street. And now we're just going to go around the corner onto Sackville Street, which is right over here. So let's go take a look. Oh, perfect. There's number 22. I believe we're looking for number 21. 21, there it is. Let's go take a look. So you can see, even now, this is a bit of a fancier neighborhood, a little bit more upscale neighborhood than the part of Soho that we were in before. Let's see if there's anything that notes the fact that he did live here. Nothing. Nope. Nothing to mark the importance of this location right here.
I mean, where the guy lived is probably not as important as like the work and where it took place. I mean, I guess a good portion of the work took place at his house, but like, is it really that important? It's clearly a commercial building now, and we don't really expect, you know, fucking capitalists to care unless they think they can make money off of it, right? I don't know.
Here on Sackville Street. So I'm guessing that here, people have no idea that one of the fathers of modern epidemiology lived right here in this very busy and now very Tony part of London.
Conversation with experts. Perspectives on Jon Snow. Oh, we're at the video time. Let's go. My voice gets a break. Yeah, I mean, there are places like Anna Green Gables, that kind of stuff, where you get like, there are definitely ones where like somebody's house is preserved. Is like Elvis's house preserved? There's like handfuls of them, and usually, you know, you get charged to go there because, you know, capitalism. So it's like if they think they can make money off of it, they'll do it. But doesn't seem like this guy's gonna. Like, maybe now. I mean, he's got a bar. Why do we've got to worry about where his actual house was? Why don't we put the bar where his house was and make it like a really nice like double-decker bar? I went to a bar once that had fucking like glass as its so it had like its stairs that went up, and then like it just had glass as like the the banister and like the edge, so it was like loft. So you could, like, if you were down at the main floor, you could look up to the next floor above, and it was glass. So like half the time there'd be like girls wearing skirts leaning on the fucking banister, like just ass out to the whole fucking pub. I don't know, man.
Well, my background, I'm a medical epidemiologist. I started off in surgery, but I felt the call of epidemiology. And during the early 90s, I had to run a course teaching people epidemiology. And we went down to the Jon Snow pub just to give them a kind of interesting thing. And we found that the pub was really run down and no one was bothering about it. And we knew there was this big heritage in the States, so we were a bit embarrassed, especially as we had two guys from CDC who were lecturing on our course. And so we said, well, we must have a John Snow Society. And that's how it started.
The Institute for Healthcare Improvement, or IHI, was founded by Don Berwick.
The bar/pub I was at, if you want to go, because as far as I know it's still there, is on the corner of Queen Street and I can't remember the other street. It's in Guelph on Queen Street. And you'll know Queen Street in Guelph because that's like where all, like, it's a whole like strip of bars and stuff. And I believe it was McCabe's, if I'm not mistaken. So you can go there and check it out for yourself if you want.
Who you may remember ran for governor. He's kind of the guru of improvement. And our mission is to improve health and healthcare around the world and to make care safer and better for patients and for just general people who happen to live in a community. And we do this with a bedrock of scientific quality improvement. And most people think quality improvement.
This guy kind of looks like the doctor.
You just go out and kind of do it. But as we've been discussing, it all involves a scientific method. You know, prediction, testing, confirming, adjusting, constantly running cycles to prove or disprove that your theory of causation, how you get from a change to a better outcome, is true.
In a way, the miasma theory was right in that there are lots of factors. Your general health, your well-being. They even brought in your morality.
Yes.
I'm afraid, you know, if you were immoral, you were going to get cholera. But that whole...
Could you imagine if your morality actually affected how likely you were to get sick of something? Like, they say that about, like, you know, people who are like more energetic or more positive tend to, or have a more positive outlook, tend to like be able to fight diseases and stuff better. But I don't know how true that actually is as opposed to like wishful thinking in a lot of cases. But hey, you know, like, you know, having positive energy to change your life and blah 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 blah. I mean, perception is half the battle, I guess. But like, how cool would it be? It'd be really interesting. And which direction would it go? Are you more likely to get sick if you're doing bad, morally wrong things? Because then you would be able to actually determine scientifically something that was morally wrong or morally right based on the rate that someone got sick at, based on participating in specific activities. And all jails would be full of nothing but people who are sick. Sucks that goblins have no morals. Well, you know, then we can't get sick ever because the you can't make us sick based on a morality if the morals don't exist at all. If that were true, Donald Trump would have cankles and bruises on his hands and be slurring words. Wait a second. Yes, happy people tend to have less stress, which can actually affect your health. Yeah. Yeah, stressing your body out, but like stuff like that, I guess, you know. All right, go on.
Idea, the holistic approach, isn't wrong as such, but they missed out the single cause. And people have often said, well, how was Snow so absolutely strong on this? I mean, even William Budd, who was a contemporary, who came up with the theory of waterborne typhoid, he also hedged his bets, but Snow didn't. And I think it's very much because he was a very logical man, but also you look at his life. He starts off as a young doctor in the minefields of the north of England. And the mines in those days were disgusting.
Oh my god, I heard minefield and my brain went immediately to like exploding mines on the ground.
Go down underground, there was no sanitation. If it rained, they'd flood. They had no way to wash their hands, they had no toilets. And he observed this and commented on it. And in his 1849, he said, you know, there must be something going on. So he was very close to the germ theory, although he was years ahead before people like Robert Koch came up with the germ theory. But he was...
Koch? That guy's name's pronounced Koch.
Was close. And so he was saying it's something to do with them not washing their hands and ingesting it from the water.
Well, first, I think it's only fair
Wash your damn hands!
to say there's no William Farr Society. And you may wonder why I would bring that up. Well, 'cause William Farr was wrong, but he did use statistics, and one might say epidemiology, to come to the wrong conclusion. What he did, as you may know, is to calculate the occurrence of cholera around London, and especially around the Thames, by the elevation of the land above the Thames.
That's right.
And he showed a really strong correlation between elevation and lower risk of getting cholera, because he believed that miasmas, these noxious gases come from human feces and animal waste and all that kind of stuff, all these bad gases were causing cholera. And
That's like literally just methane.
unfortunately, his analysis didn't account for all the other factors that might have been important. Income level, what kind of house you lived in, what kind of water you got. All he did was have this theory about miasmas from the Thames, and it looks really good. If you look at that graph and his data, it's pretty compelling, but it's wrong.
I have a whole thing about this. Just because somebody can make a good argument for something, it doesn't mean it's correct. And acknowledging that somebody makes a good argument about something doesn't mean that you're wrong, or that you're conceding like that they are correct when you know that they're wrong about their overall conclusion. You don't have to like overcommit to every single fucking thing.
There's been a lot of criticism, in a way, of the way John Snow and some of the others of his time have become an icon of epidemiology.
Yeah.
And people have said, well, why him? I mean, he wasn't the only one doing maps, he wasn't the only one who was beginning to look at statistics. But what was very interesting about John Snow, I think, the deductive reasoning, the fact that he was, yes, he was a qualified doctor, but he was very much a scientist of a doctor, and he believed in measurement, and he was against the flow of the times. There were other people who thought that cholera might be waterborne, but it was only as part of a general theory. People sometimes want to know, when did epidemiology start?
It seems to me that he was in the right place at the right time and had the motivation to actually take the opportunity that he was able to recognize an opportunity and take it.
Right. I mean, we didn't really call it epidemiology till well later in the century. It's really a 20th century phenomenon.
What is this drop off? What happened in like the 90s?
As such. They wouldn't have thought of it like that at all. They understood epidemics because they had the word in French, epidemic. But it could be just one or two cases, maybe even one case if it was a nasty disease. But the idea of researching those epidemics, they would have called like a study, or Snow often referred to the great experiment that needed to be done to show that water was the cause.
So when this vast outbreak of hundreds of cases you said occurred, he used basic epidemiology, and we use the term shoe leather epidemiology.
Okay, I don't know about you guys. Oh, HIV? Oh, maybe. Maybe. That's a good point. I was asking rhetorically, but I'm glad you had an answer. This guy, I don't know, okay, maybe it's just me, by the way. This guy does not sound the way he looks. Like, this guy talks and I expect a different sound to come out of his mouth. Is anybody else getting that? Is that just me? It's very distracting.
To describe what he did, he got on his feet and walked around and started asking where are these illnesses occurring, and he began to plot them out on a map, which is sometimes called the ghost map or John Snow's map, so he could see patterns. Epidemiologists essentially look for patterns of disease and then make a prediction or find an association between hypothetical causes or origins of the outbreak.
Okay, I'm not crazy. Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you. It's not just me. I thought I was like, is this guy's voice?
And you read very short accounts of this map, or when you see it presented in other documentaries or whatever, you often get the impression that John Snow is, walking around Soho with a clipboard and this map and putting dots and making this histogram as he walks around, which is not true. And in fact,
I mean, I wouldn't expect that anyway. I imagine that would be like you would collect all the data and you would get like the data from the the registry that's already collecting the data. You would take the data, then you would plot the data onto the, and like maybe you'd have to go and confirm some things and double check some stuff and yada yada yada. But like I imagine like a lot of this didn't actually take place by like, you know, hoofing it around.
The more scholarly accounts that I've read make it sound like he made the whole map after, like well after this was over.
Yes, that's
And
right.
so did he have a map he was making in his head? Did he have a sketch? Did he just use tables and have a picture in his head, or what did he do?
He was very good at drawing up tables, and it was something, because of his work with anesthesia, he was very good at working with compounds and drawing up effects and things. So he would have been making lists of the deaths, and he would have some people like the local doctors and Henry Whitehead, the curate, collecting the death data. What's very interesting is notebooks, which he kept almost every day of his life. For the period that he was investigating this, is the time that
He's too busy to write it down.
Busy. And what I think he was doing was not using a map, but he was collecting addresses and so on. And when he was presenting the information to the Board of Inquiry, they set up an inquiry immediately. Because this was a very nasty outbreak with some important people had died in addition to the four. And so he
well, somebody important died. We better have an inquiry and find out what the fuck happened, and not any of those schlebs over there that nobody fucking cares about.
He was presenting the information, and that's when he drew the map to convince them.
The map that's on this lovely John Snow Society mug.
So he had, if you like, he'd got the data, and this was just
We have mugs!
another way of demonstrating it.
If I'm ever in London, I'm going to the Jon Snow pub and I'm stealing a pint glass. I'm taking one. One of them will become mine, all right? I'm taking one.
It wasn't how he solved the outbreak.
When I talk to my students about this, I always ask them, so did Jon Snow perform a case control study, which is fundamental in epidemiology. It's the greatest tool for working up outbreaks that we have. In a case control study, you study the exposure of the cases, in this case to water pumps. And
So I guess yes, he did technically, because he was using the two water companies.
the exposure of the controls to people who were not cases, who were not sick, and their exposure to water pumps, and there should be a difference. Jon Snow did not look at controls. He only looked at cases. People were sick and arrayed them on a map and said, these are closer to the Broad Street water pump, and here's some exceptions that prove the rule. So as the father of epidemiology, the fundamental tool for working up outbreaks was not what he actually used.
And the rest of London not getting sick is not considered a control?
Well, he didn't really talk about it that way.
Right.
And if you read his stuff, it wasn't, he wasn't looking.
I feel like you're cheating. Just because he didn't talk about it because it wasn't the main part of his study doesn't mean the control group didn't exist and it wasn't considered. It had to have been considered to be left out, didn't it? Am I crazy? Well, I'm arguing with a professional. What am I thinking?
He had a vague idea that there were these people who weren't sick, but it wasn't a disciplined way. Reverend Whitehead was, who's not known as the father of epidemiology, he was a local guy and he knew everybody. And
This guy who's not known as this thing. I hope I'm remembered as somebody who's not known as this thing. That'd be great. You know, Chesh was things. She was not known as this. That's so fucking silly. I'm a fan.
so he was able to go around and ask questions. First, he found more cases, but he also interviewed non-cases, and that was more like a case control study. So maybe Reverend Whitehead ought to be the father of epidemiology. I mean, but Jon Snow, what he did was really quite remarkable.
When a mommy and a daddy love each other.
So it's at a particular moment in time before microscopy is fully evolving as a proper science, before the hygiene methods have really got going, and yet Snow is 40 years ahead of his time. In a way, it's tragic he didn't live to see that. And what would he have contributed? Masses, I think.
Isn't it interesting that you're talking about how theories, some based on empiric observation, some of them remarkably astute, coexisted side by side with nonsense.
Yes.
And it's
What do you mean remarkable? It happens all the time. That's basically always everywhere, all the time. As particularly on the internet, because the internet is a little bit of everything all of the time. So, like, yeah, of course we have fucking flat earthers that still exist now. Why? Because we're stupid monkey brains. Like, we still have anti-vaxxers. Why? Because we're stupid monkey brains. Fucking found out yesterday that Steve thinks the 2020 election was the election was stolen. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But like, yeah, dumb fuck exists. Dumb fuck always exists. You're never gonna get rid of dumb fuck. Because anytime you get rid of one part of dumb fuck, all you're doing is dragging all dumb fuckery upwards a little bit to being less dumb fuck than this, but still dumb fuck compared to this. You're never gonna get rid of it. Fucking cryptocurrency, yeah, you wanna talk about dumb fuckery? Good God. Our economy is stupid as shit. Everything we do is dumb, and we just throw human suffering at it until we don't need to throw as much human suffering at it anymore. That's basically what we do. Unga bunga, man!
It's no different.
It's still true.
Today,
Yes.
right? I mean, theories, and I'm not going to take sides, but creationism,
I'm not gonna take sides, but creationism. Hey! We stand this, man. This is Dawn, right? Good shit, Dawn. Dawn, take a side. It's okay. You can take sides. Don't be a coward, Dawn. You can do it.
coexisted side by side with nonsense.
Yes.
And it's no different.
It's still true.
Today,
Yes.
right? I mean, theories, and I'm not going to take sides, but creationism, homeopathic remedies, I mean, these are wild, to me, wild theories that exist right alongside of modern medicine with synthetic drugs that are targeted to conformations of proteins and all this data we have about evolution and climate change and so forth. So I think it's a natural, we hold on to the kind of mysterious, the not easily explained phenomenon and theories, and at the same time people will say, well, you know, there's this thing called science and we can actually use it to predict.
Bro's just throwing shade. The death pump. Not gonna take sides, proceeds to throw creationists under the bus. You know what? I needed that. I needed that chuckle. That was good. I like that. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Alright. Below the full-length interview with Dr. Rosalind Stanwell-Smith, filmed at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Dr. Stanwell-Smith discusses her role with the Jon Snow Society and the impact of Jon Snow's original mind on the science of epidemiology. Gay.
So my first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how the Jon Snow Society started? Because that wasn't on my list, so go ahead.
Well, my background, I'm a medical epidemiologist. I started off in surgery, but I felt the call of epidemiology. And during the early 90s, I had to run.
This is 48 minutes long. Are we gonna sit through this right now? I think we are. I think we're gonna do it. All right, guys. This lady's gonna give us a 48-minute interview, some of which we've already listened to like 10 minutes of, I think, in one of the other clips. But that is okay. We can do this. I believe in us. Go get a snack. Go get a snack right now. Do it. You need a snack. I need a snack. We all need a snack. We all need a snack. Here's this picture of Dapper in his human suit with the biggest shitty grin on his face you've ever seen in your life. I went and got another cookie. All right. So this is going to be... Buckle in for about an hour. I'm not going to two times speed the video. And the reason I'm not going to do that, there's a reason, I promise. The reason I'm not going to do that is because I like to make it so that way when people watch these in the future, they can speed the video up. And if I speed up the video, they're going to have to go back and forth, speeding it up and slowing it down. So I try to do things at the same rate. Unless it's really slow, like last time. They were talking real slow. So, all right. I hope you got your snack. Let's go.
A course teaching people epidemiology. And we went down to the John Snow pub just to give them a kind of interesting thing. And we found that the pub was really run down and no one was bothering about it. And we knew there was this big heritage in the States. So we were a bit embarrassed, especially as we had two guys from CDC who were lecturing on our course. And so we said, well, we must have a John Snow Society. And that's how it started. Right?
What year was that roughly?
About 1990.
Okay, yeah.
It took us a couple of years to drum up all the enthusiasm and to get people involved. And right from the start, it was meant to be a network of not just epidemiologists, but people who worked in public health, people who worked in microbiology, in statistics, in water, of course,
right.
and in anaesthesia.
Right.
I mean, let's not forget
Right,
he was basically an anaesthetist. And so it started off as a fun thing, but with a kind of serious intent that we shouldn't forget the memory of such an important man.
And the idea that there's all the different kinds of people involved is interesting, because one of the things that I find interesting about...
I don't know about that. I don't know. I am not like... I don't think about things that way. I don't think the individuals are important. You know what I mean? Like, it's a way to remember, and I get that there's a heritage thing, and there's like a thing that people are like, oh, my ancestors, blah, blah, blah. Like, people care about that. I don't get it. Like, my brain doesn't work like that. I'm like, do we care about who did this? Does this individual matter? Like, I feel like they are not the important part of what's going on here. And maybe I'm just too skeptical about it. Maybe it's a me problem. It's probably a me problem. Maybe I'm just an asshole.
About epidemiology, especially the way that John Snow did it, is that there were all these aspects to it way beyond just data collection, but it's sort of like, how do you know what's normally happening in the neighborhood? What are the politics of the water companies? You know, kinds of statistics that apply and don't apply, and so you have people from all of those walks of life now.
There's been a lot of criticism, in a way, of the way John Snow and some of the others...
So you're saying that you are not important? Yes, I am not important. If you learn anything from me, or you take anything from my streams and you get any kind of enjoyment out of those things, I'm not the important part. I don't matter. I had this conversation when people were upset about a different Jon Snow. It was Jimmy Snow. When people were upset about Jimmy Snow and the Rachel Oates situation, and like finding out that he was being sketchy with using his fan base as a dating pool and stuff like that, people are coming to me being like, oh, this is so upsetting to me. I got a lot from his content, and like it really helped me through X, Y, and Z. And I had people coming to me talking about that. And I was like, listen, what you got from him isn't up to him. He's making a thing, and you're interpreting the thing. It's the death of the author style thing. Like, you take... It's the same thing with, like, people who are upset about J.K. Rowling, who are like, I really identified with the Harry Potter series for whatever reason, and now I feel like I can't like the Harry Potter series anymore because J.K. Rowling is such a cantankerous bitch. And I'm like, you can have both. You don't have to throw out whatever progress or whatever you've learned from someone that you found out is a shitty person after the fact. You can still take those things with you. Don't undo the things that you've imbibed and that you've learned, that you've decided are still good things. Like, maybe re-examine those things to make sure that they are still in line with what you think they are and what you want to be. But you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater sort of scenario, if you know what I mean. So, like, J.K. Rowling doesn't matter to what you have gleaned from reading her work. Now, that doesn't mean you need to support her in any fashion, way, or anything like that. In fact, probably don't do that. But that doesn't mean you have to, like, feel bad because you were able to glean something good from somebody who's shitty, right? So, like, again, if you learn anything or take anything away from watching my content, I'm not the important thing. The important thing is you and what you get from it. Don't give Rowling any more money, though. Yeah, probably don't give her money. Yeah, probably that. Yeah, you should be important to yourself. But, like, I'm not important. I don't matter. I mean, you could send me $1 a month if you want. That'd be cool. Keeps me going. But, like, I'm not the important part of the scenario, right?
Of his time have become an icon of epidemiology.
Yeah.
And people have said, well, why him? I mean, he wasn't the only one doing maps. He wasn't the only one who was beginning to look at statistics. But what was very interesting about John Snow, I think, the deductive reasoning, the fact that he was, yes, he was a qualified doctor, but he was very much a scientist of a doctor. And he believed in measurement, and he was against the flow of the times. There were other people who thought that cholera might be waterborne, but it was only as part of a general theory. People sometimes want to know, when did epidemiology start?
Right.
I mean, we didn't really call it epidemiology.
This sounds like bullshit to me. I don't mean this in a, sorry, that sounded aggressive. I don't think it has anything to do with, oh, well, he was doing this or he was doing that. It's the narrative. The story around what happened and how predominant it was at the time is what makes Jon Snow the inventor or the founder or the person we remember. It really doesn't have much to do with anything else, in my opinion. I think, again, maybe I'm cynical about this, but I really do think it has very little to do with who was doing what at the time. They're like Pythagoras, right? There are plenty of people doing math around the world inventing trigonometry and doing trigonometry long before or in and around the same time in different parts of the world. We just don't call them that thing because that's not the thing we remember, and part of that is incredibly biased towards Europe for reasons. Learners are important. The teachers are only the ones showing the way. Yeah, it's your teacher isn't the important person in the scenario. Right, especially them as the individual. They're not important. They're important to society. Teachers are great. It's just like there's lots of things that we remember because the narrative makes it more compelling and easier to remember, or like the dramatization around whatever had happened. Right? There's lots of things that are like that.
Till well later in the century, it's really a 20th century phenomenon as such. They wouldn't have thought of it like that at all. They understood epidemics because they had the word in French, epidemic. But it could be just one or two cases, maybe even one case if it was a nasty disease. But the idea of researching those epidemics, they would have called like a study, or Snow often referred to the great experiment that needed to be done to show that water was the cause.
And he had two famous studies that I know about anyway. One where he has the big map, not the cholera map that we're talking about today, but the map of different water companies and which ones supplied parts of London.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I hear the great experiment applied to that, and sometimes I hear it applied to this, to the actual cholera outbreak. So did he mean both, one, the other?
I think when he referred to the great experiment, he meant that the demonstration that water was conveying cholera, he thought that he'd done enough in his 1849 pamphlet, which was just...
Yeah, I feel like the answer to that question is like even those two things weren't enough because it took another guy using another outbreak in another place to be able to convince people that this was reasonable and what was going on. Mustard gas. Welcome to Iron Goblin. Thank you so much for joining us. Cheers. Thank you so much.
It's a short few pages, but it wasn't enough to convince people. And people often say, well, why was he so on water? Most of the people theorising on cholera, and if you go to the British Library just up the road, you'll see that there are dozens and dozens of books written by doctors and scientists and loads of other people. But they had this multi-theory of disease, very much part of the miasma theory which was the non-germ theory of disease.
Well, that was the bad air.
Yeah, bad air, nasty smells. Very much part of that was a multi-causation idea. So the concept that one thing could cause cholera, like the water, was very unusual.
So I didn't appreciate that. So the people who thought that miasma was mostly the cause of disease, did they think that tainted water was a kind of additive?
Well, it could be that it could be tainted air, tainted water, tainted objects.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like there aren't water particles in the air that can transmit nonsense, right? So it seemed like the miasma theory wasn't wrong. It was just too broad to be applicable to, like, solve a problem, right?
The idea with miasma, it could come in by any route. I mean, one of the interesting things, and we have to remember Snow was doing experiments in anesthesia.
Right.
And so he knew the effects of inhaling things on the body. Okay. And the main route for miasma was thought to be inhaling. Okay. And so he very early on went, it doesn't cholera.
I mean, I guess, but like, inhaling into the lungs or consuming food is relatively similar in this scenario, right?
It doesn't seem like this. Right. It's much more you're ingesting something into the digestive tract. And this was like the beginning, if you like, of understanding that a one cause theory of disease. In a way, the miasma theory was right in that there are lots of factors, your general health, your well-being. Sure. They even brought in your morality. Yes. I'm afraid, if you were immoral, you were going to get cholera. But that whole idea, the holistic approach, isn't wrong as such. Right. But they missed out the single cause. And people have often said, well, how was Snow so absolutely strong on this? I mean, even William Budd, who was a contemporary, who came up with the theory of waterborne typhoid, he also hedged his bets, but Snow didn't. And I think it's very much his because he was a very logical man, but also you look at his life. He starts off as a young doctor in the minefields of the north of England, and the mines in those days were disgusting. You go down underground.
Guys, did you know that somebody's life and experience is going to inform their opinions? I'm being so sassy today. This lady didn't say anything wrong. I'm just being a dick.
There was no sanitation. If it rained, they'd flood. They had no way to wash their hands. They had no toilets. And he observed this and commented on it. And in his 1849, he said, there must be something going on.
Yes, you're technically correct. The best kind of correct.
He was very close to the germ theory, although he was years ahead before people like Robert Koch came up with the germ theory. But he was close. And so he was saying it's something to do with them not washing their hands and ingesting it from the water.
It's so interesting because in the course we have a lot of examples where we go from people kind of collecting data and information to sort of making empirical.
I'm sorry, what? The black lung is back? like the black lung from Zoolander? Like, I got the black lung, Pop. Like that black lung? What do you mean? The fuck do you mean the black lung is back? Good God.
Empirical theories, like looking at statistical regularities, to then having like a real theory with causation. And so in this case, right, it's the germ theory that came way after John Snow. And just yesterday we were talking to people in Cambridge about Isaac Newton, and there, you have Galileo in 1610 saying, this is going around this, and the moons are going around Jupiter, and Jupiter's going around the sun, and the Earth's going around, and it's putting it all together. It's like there must be something, holding all of this, but no gravity, right? There's no conception of gravity until many decades later when Newton comes along.
Well, the conception is that there's something going on that I don't know what it is. I mean, the Higgs boson is like that. Like, mathematically, we know there's something going on, but we don't know exactly what it is or what's going on with it, right? There's lots of things like that in science. There's these gaps that end up getting filled in later. The shoulders of giants thing. Like, the same thing with, like, general relativity, and then Stephen Hawking building on that with, like, wormhole time dilation and stuff.
And it's the same, it's just when you told the story just like that, it strikes me that, Jon Snow is like, there's something going on here. And then he moves on to this data collection phase.
And because he's so empirical, so okay, he's observed the miners, and that's where cholera hits England. When it comes in the 1830s, it comes in via the trading ships that go primarily to the north of England. And so the first cases are seen up there in Northumbria. And so he's had, if you like, first-hand knowledge of cholera. He's seen that it spreads like wildfire, but in particular circumstances. I mean, one of the problems with cholera is that because it's not that contagious from person to person, people would observe that you could be nursing someone and not catch it. And yet you'd be living in an area. Of course, we now know you're living in an area where the water is polluted. And a lot of people would catch it, and they couldn't work that out. Of course, it fitted.
Did Rome not have an incident where there was bacteria in the water that was killing people, and they figured that out? Did that not happen in Rome? I feel like this was this cholera outbreak was like shit in the water was something that other people knew about before 18. What was it? 1840, 1843? What year was this? What does the stream say? It's the title of the stream. It's got the date on it. 18 something and something or another. Like, I really, am I wrong about that? I thought that there was, like, other times where this had already come up on more than one occasion. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm just not remembering, right?
With the miasma idea that the air was bad in those poor areas. And that's why people moved up to the hillier areas. And it was logical for them. But the other thing that Snow did that I think was absolutely remarkable when he's comparing...
Okay, I'm not crazy. Thank you. Feline and Templar. Thank you. I'm not crazy. I appreciate you confirming and checking myself before I'm wrecking myself with like, am I stupid?
The water companies, and it was a little bit like cable TV. Water companies were rushing in, and they were in one street. You could have 3 or 4 water companies laying down pipes.
It is like cable companies, yes.
Yeah. And it was the beginning, if you like, of running water. I mean, London, as a very advanced city in some ways, was going to be very early in adopting water. But even at that time, they could only have piped water for a couple of hours a day. And remember, it had to be pumped. And so they had...
Who the fuck? Which one of you motherfuckers is it? I see you. Manya, is that you? Dapper, it's one of you two. Fucking... That's Dapper. I think that's Dapper. My bet is Dapper.
Hadn't got the concept of running it continuously, and they didn't think people should work on a Sunday, for instance, so day of rest. So basically, no water on a Sunday. So it was all a bit haphazard. And some companies were drawing the water directly from the dirtiest part of the Thames. Whereas other companies, like in Soho, were going from the north of London. There was something called the New River Company, and they were taking water from the much cleaner stretches beyond the industrialised city. And the irony for Soho, where this great outbreak took place, was that in general, the piped water was pretty good. And Snow had to go right down into South London, near the Thames, where
fucking see you.
Where the Vauxhall and Lambeth companies and the Southwark company were drawing it straight out of the Thames to actually do this work. And I think it was brilliant deduction that he would compare the two. And
how the fuck does YouTube not have raids yet, by the way? I want to go raid somebody's channel on YouTube.
Might say, well, how would he know? Because most of these people were renting; they wouldn't know
where their water came from.
Well, he used a chemical test to see how much salt was in it. I have to remember that analysis was not microbiological at all at this stage. It's mostly chemical.
I need the hold on. I need an audio cue. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Uno momento, por favor. I need an audio cue for what's going on right now. Hold on. I need the Among Us. No. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Are you guys ready for this? Are you ready?
So that even at the end of the 19th century, people are doing chemical analyses. And so actually having a high salt content, and if in doubt, he would just taste it. And of course, the water that came from the estuary, Thames being a tidal river, coming straight in from the sea, then that would be saltier. And the saltier water, right down in the estuary where all the boats were, that was the filthiest. So he was actually able to very accurately draw these tables up.
So just to review then, what he was trying to do is, when you say that he called it a great experiment, he was trying to isolate possible causes, and he of course was more interested in water than other causes, because he was semi-convinced from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And so then, if the biggest difference between people's lives was where they got their water, that to him was great evidence, right? And then it was even greater evidence, unfortunately, when you had this terrible outbreak in 1854, where huge numbers of people started dying in this very concentrated area, and could he show that that was from the water? But neither one of these things completely convinced the other people who were studying what we would call public health then, right?
He was very disappointed that his work in comparing the water and showing that there was less cholera if your water came from a cleaner stretch of the Thames, which to him seemed very self-evident.
Right.
So, but imagine the miasma people with their worldview very much
I feel like we're shitting on the miasma people a little too much. They weren't wrong, they just were not specific enough and also not broad enough. About a specific thing. It's not like diseases can't be transmitted through the air. It's not like being around rotting corpses could be unsafe and you'll get sick, right? So I feel like we might be dunking on these people a little bit too much.
Probably we're wrong about a lot of things today.
No, it's actually kind of like the Earth being at the center of the solar system rather than the sun. It reminds me again of yesterday.
Yes, very much. It links in very much with gravity. And of course, with astronomy, and people have often observed, the logical thing is to assume that there's a dome over the Earth. Yeah. You look up and that's what it looks like.
Right, and if the air smells bad, you're getting sick from the air.
Exactly.
Right.
And of course, there was some truth. I mean, dirty air is bad for you.
Right.
But it was all muddled up with this idea. And it was such a shame. Poor Snow, he'd done all this work. He was continuing to do it. He was convinced that if there was an outbreak, if you like, that would be the great experiment. Because he was expecting it to be in South London. They'd been...
Because the water is terrible there.
Yeah, they'd been several outbreaks. So when a few streets from where he lived, in Soho, he hears of this outbreak, he's excited, but not just because it's on his doorstep. He's already...
Oh shit, a bunch of people are dying from that thing I've been studying. Woohoo! Let's go check it out!
Already interested in pumps. A few other people in the country have said, it's funny, but it seems to be everyone who's drunk the pump water, and people have ignored it. But Snow has thought, wow.
That could be it.
And when he sees a sudden outbreak, now we call it a point source epidemic curve, with all the cases appearing very, very quickly, single source, perhaps a transitory one. Well, he recognised, without having epidemic curves and stuff like we have today, he recognised that this was a most unusual outbreak. This wasn't typical cholera. Cholera usually spread insidiously. Obviously, it's in the water periodically. It's in people with very poor hygiene, really haven't been able to wash their hands at all. But otherwise, it takes a few days, each case. The incubation is quite long. But with this, they're all...
Yeah, using the word insidious in this scenario, the verbiage confuses me a little bit. I think I understand, but I'm dumb.
Getting sick over a weekend. And that means they've all got it from a single source.
And let me just say that we've talked to Don Goldman from our School of Public Health at Harvard about the cholera epidemic. And then, of course, I've read, Tufte's work because he's so fascinated by this map, but he removes the Voronoi line that we can talk about later.
Yeah.
But then Stephen Johnson's book, which you mentioned, is the compilation of the work, actually, of much scholarship about Jon Snow. But in all of those, it seems to point to this story where baby Louis, the poor baby who gets sick first, her diapers or excrement or whatever it was winds up in the cesspool in the basement or in the street outside the address that's right next to the well for the Broad Street pump. Is that account?
Yes.
True.
So what we understand now was that we'd now call that the
Patient zero?
Yes, patient zero. Basically, there may well have been some cases before, but in terms of this sudden outbreak, and the reason why it became such a violent outbreak is
Dapper's premieres in 30 minutes, so we'll try to be done by then.
this house, which is now the public house, the pub.
Yes, we will visit the pub later.
All right, okay. This house, like many of the others, has a cesspool for drainage. Usually this would be in the cellar, either in the front of the house or just at the back. And it's interesting because social changes are coming in at this time. It had been quite profitable for landlords to empty these cesspools and sell the sludge
As
essentially
fertilizer?
for fertilizer. But at this point in the 1850s, Britain has discovered another source of nitre in bird guano.
Oh, bird.
Yeah, and much easier because anyone knows bird poo. It's drier and easier to deal with.
Smells
and so
less bad.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
And although the explosive industry has been using the nitrogen, for instance, in feces, this is a much better source. So suddenly it becomes much less economically
To
profitable
collect the waste.
to collect the waste unless you pay. Now, the wealthy, the middle classes, the upper classes, they go on paying. I mean, who doesn't want their cesspool emptied?
Right.
But the poor who are renting, the landlords can, there's no law, the landlords can
Shitty landlords say it ain't so.
choose. They have tried to bring in legislation, 1848 Public Health Act, they try and bring it in that you must keep the streets clean, you must empty cesspits, but there's little enforcement. These are the early days of public
When
health
is the
legislation.
year of the famous Great Stink?
That's 1858.
1858.
That's 4
Okay, so
years
that's
ahead of
after
this.
the cholera. Yeah.
And in fact, ironically, it's only when the Great Stink occurs, and if you like, the great and the good are inconvenienced by sewage, that they actually rush through the legislation to build better sewers in London. I mean, London has the first city in the world to reach a population of 1 million. It's rapidly growing. In those early 1800s, we can imagine it did have sewers, but they were very rapidly inadequate. And unlike some other cities where they were trying to plan ahead, London was just kind of growing, and that was a huge problem. So you have the cesspools overflowing more than they did before. And so if you can imagine this Broad Street in the centre of Soho, predominantly poor people, where most of the cesspools are just left until it's really disgusting and the landlords have to act. And you have this little girl on a very hot night getting what they called exhaustive diarrhea, which is cholera, gives you this very runny liquid diarrhea. And the poor mother, I mean, I think a couple of things could have happened. Most of these were families living in one room. Often to get to the cesspool, you had to go through another person's home. If their place was round at the front, she could just
Throw it out the window.
throw it out the window.
Yeah.
The pavements would have been pretty disgusting. And the pump was very near. So whether it came through the cesspool, where obviously quite a bit of perhaps during the day, she'd managed to get down to it, and at night just draining down, these were shallow wells.
And how deep roughly would the water have been
20
coming from?
foot or so, really very shallow. London,
20 feet. 20 feet doesn't seem shallow to me, but I guess it depends on what you're comparing it to. Like, does 20 feet seem shallow to you? Like, I would think 6 feet would be shallow. Then again, I'm also small, so I mean, if I'm touching the bottom at 6 feet, I'm below. I'm like 2 feet down in the water at that point.
of course, and one of the reasons why it became such a great city, no shortage of water.
Right.
I mean, it's something when the Romans founded the main city of London 2,000 years ago, it was partly because of the tidal river bringing the ships in and the ample water. Basically, it's we've got a very high water table.
Right.
And if you
So just
dug
tap
anywhere
in.
in London, you'd be able to have a shallow
So the
well.
Romans are famous for all their aqueducts and actually for some amount of sewer systems. So did they have a system?
They did.
They did.
Yeah.
So how did, like, I'm a little bit confused. If half of this came from Rome, how did they fuck this up? Did they just forget?
Mainly it was based on the little rivers that drained into the Great River Thames, so that they would use those as their sewer system.
Did they cover them up, or that was much later?
They did have covered sewers, but not. After all, London wasn't like Rome.
Right.
They did have water systems, and we have uncovered them. And they had toilets, latrine systems, but very little evidence of that survives, which suggests to me that it was at a fairly basic level.
I just have to ask you one really weird question. So I was at Ephesus once, and I saw the ruins in a Roman ruin of a social toilet where there were people sitting next to each other using the toilet, chatting. Is that like a common thing in the Roman Empire?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. No. They
Shit posting. It's shit posting. It's just shit posting. We just forgot the reason is the Dark Ages. Was this okay? All right, we're gonna have to cover that at some point. We're gonna have to talk about that because, like, the fuck happened? Like, I feel like I've read about it before, but I've long since, like, breezed over it. That it's like I'd have to go back. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you just forgot all of the fucking progress we've made over fucking X, Y, and Z fucking... whatever.
Because even though they were very sophisticated, it was still quite a big...
I guess we have so much access to information now. Like, access to it seems like so impossible to me, barring something would have to be so catastrophic to happen to, like, lose so much information that we have now. Like, you could get rid of the internet, right? But, like, that would affect things. But, like, yeah, okay, but London wasn't, like, capital of Rome. You know what I, like... the internet really does change things. The transmission of information across the planet really, really does change things. So, like, even if, like, I don't know, the entire continent of North America imploded, Germany isn't gonna lose out on the information that was gathered there. Like, you might lose out on some stuff that was, like, really recent discoveries, but not, like, some of the long-standing things. I don't know. Libraries, I guess.
Big deal to have proper sanitation.
Right. And they did take the waste away from those public toilets,
Yeah, they would rinse them. Okay. They didn't have flushing loos.
I just have a hard time believing we would forget to wash your hands. You know what I mean? Like, bars of soap would just go away. Like, I just have a hard time grasping that. Like, I can understand that it could happen, and I can understand some of the steps that it would take to get there, but my brain just can't accept that for some reason. It's like, no,
they'd have slaves to rinse the loos for them. And they didn't have toilet paper, they used sponges. That's a whole new course, isn't it?
Really.
It's so interesting. But we have uncovered a few, Hadrian's Wall, which is the wall they built between England and Scotland to keep the Picts out.
Right.
And we found some, on that wall, we've found some primitive evidence of the soldiers' latrines, and they were all communal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so did the Romans have any idea, do you know, of how important it was to keep water supplies clean?
Yes, they did. They had, they had the Great Sewer that's still in use today.
Right.
I think it's called the Cloaca Maxima.
I don't know.
But anyway, it's still in use. The Romans were great sewer builders in that sense. They didn't build, as far as we know, anything like that in London.
But in terms of being able to predict that bad air or bad water or whatever would make you ill, right? Because the course is about prediction. So the reason that we come back to Jon Snow, that we're so interested in Jon Snow in building the course, is that yeah, there were Romans with sewers, there were other people who were clean, etc. But people hadn't made the connection between that you could find kind of an underlying cause by doing a kind of statistical canvassing of an outbreak, and then trying to figure out what the cause of a disease is so that you could predict such conditions would cause that disease in the future, right? And so Jon Snow is given credit in a lot of popular material that I've read anyway as being the person who first did that, who used this cholera epidemic to say, you know, I think this is the cause, but I'm then going to collect all this data to see whether that could be the most likely cause. And so is it true that he's the first person who did that, or not really?
He's definitely one of the first.
Okay.
I think if you really care...
It really seems like he definitively was not. He was just one of the earlier ones that did it in that area at that time after a lot of information was just gone. Like, again, maybe specific to cholera, sure, but, like, see, Jon Snow is just symbolic, right? Like, that's what it seems to me.
Careful. We think these are all joint collaborative things.
Right.
He was very fortunate to have some very able people working with him. It was the local curate, Henry Whitehead,
right.
who did a lot of the door-to-door
right.
searches, which actually established the pattern of the deaths. And although Snow was remarkable in being...
Yeah, Jon Snow had no idea about, like, germ theory at all. Like, not even close.
Very ahead in the deductive reasoning and so on. If you like, I wouldn't say he was, like, the only one.
Right.
And although, yes, he used the Voronoi technique to, you know, show that the distance...
The walking distances.
Yeah, the walking distance.
Yeah.
He was obviously a brilliant man. He also was one of the...
Well, he also literally lived there. So, like, there's also, like, this whole thing of, like, literally being in the right place at the right time, studying the correct thing. And that's not to say that he wasn't good at statistics, and that's not to say that he wasn't good at deductive reasoning. His reasoning and his methodology were all good, but if he wasn't living in a space where a cholera outbreak happened at the same time as this legislative process happening between these two different water companies, then he, like there's just so many factors that are involved, and it's like, I don't know. I don't mean to, like, shit on the guy or anything, but get it? Shit on him. But, like, I feel like he's not the important part of this scenario that we should be focusing on.
Pioneers of dose-response relationships
in his
work in
anesthesia work. Yeah.
So he was an absolute remarkable man. But one of the reasons why his memory has been criticised is that people are going, well, it wasn't just him.
No.
And of course it wasn't just him. I think, in a way, with the history of epidemiology, we don't have that many icons. Mm-hmm. So we may have piled a lot on the memory of Snow. But certainly...
Yeah, you have. Isn't that what we were just saying? Serendipity? Yeah. Again, Jon Snow definitively, like, was studying the right thing at the right time and saw the opportunity and was able to seize on the opportunity. And lots of people are not able to recognize an opportunity when it kicks them in the fucking face, and then let alone be able to successfully navigate that opportunity and be able to take advantage of it. So again, I'm not trying to take away from what he was able to do. I'm just maybe a little bit of temperance.
Certainly, he was one of the first.
And you mentioned something earlier that's really important now, and, you know, I know we have these questions and we're going to weave them all in somehow in our conversation, but you mentioned something earlier about the difference between how epidemiology is regarded in the UK and in the US. And in the US, it's really regarded as a partnership, everything from microbiology and the sort of statistical modeling at both the small scales and then the large scales. And when you said Henry Whitehead, it makes me think of the kind of human data collection and the human element in epidemiology. And we had a question here that epidemiology is a little bit unlike, say, gravity, in that it actually depends on human behavior. And so it seems to me, as an outsider, that to model the spread of a disease or predict the spread of a disease, you need to know everything from how, you know, what are the genetic origins of the disease? What are the...
I think it would be arrogant to say that we do know everything about any spread of any epidemic. We might have a more or less or a lot or more or little information about each thing, but to say that we know, like, we might know key points within what we're currently capable of knowing, but there's no way to know, like, the number of variables that you would need to know to constitute or even get close to what I would constitute everything. And I don't even mean, like, known unknowns or unknown knowns. I mean things like everyone's body temperature in the fucking, within a radius. Like, that kind of information.
The genetic properties of the particular...
We might get that one day, though. We might get those fucking little nanobots and everybody's got fucking nanobots doing nanobot shit. Make me a robot!
Infecting bacteria, if there is one, right, from that level through, medical manifestations of all of that, up through, how is the population arranged and how do the politics work. And it seemed to me anyway that in the US there are people who treat public health as that kind of end-to-end study. Is it really? I mean, I think you agree that it has to be kind of that way. And
I really want a date. When was this filmed? Because I wonder if it's pre or post the pandemic, and I wonder if it's like, it's definitely not like that recent. Like, it's not gonna have the updated information about like RFK Jr. and stuff and the way that's being handled, right?
And then here, it's maybe a little bit different sometimes.
No, I think very much now it's in Britain it's very, very much a joint enterprise, and perhaps we took a little longer than in the States to get that idea as joint enterprise. Perhaps we had a few more mavericks working on their own. I mean, the whole public health teaching movement very much started on the continent of Europe and in the States. And we were somewhat late.
Which is a little ironic given the Jon Snow story.
It's ironic,
right?
but we...
No, but seriously, like, to go back to Jon Snow and this kind of collaboration, he worked with Henry Whitehead to assemble data about where all the deaths were and what people were doing.
Why don't they just give props to more than one dude? There's clearly 3 people that have been mainstays in this narrative, right? There's Jon Snow, this Henry guy, and William Farr, right? So, like, I don't know why they don't just credit all 3 of them. Like, why wouldn't you just do that? Because clearly it was all 3 of them that manifested this and were able to, like, demonstrate it all the way through. And one of them was just the guy who knew people. So he can gather and confirm all the information. Like, why are we gotta snub that guy? What the hell?
And he also worked with other doctors. People often don't give those other guys the credit, but he wasn't the only doctor.
You're saying people, but you're the people. It's you. You're the one doing that. What do you mean? Very funny.
Doctor in the area, and they were all working together. Right. And he certainly wasn't the only doctor who thought that there might be something in this poor hygiene. We're at the beginning of the Victorian obsession with hygiene.
Okay.
We've had the Public Health Act, which, if you like, says we must get rid of cholera by cleaning up the environment. So they very much think that they should be sterilising the environment.
That might have been
So then they weren't totally wrong about their miasma environment. It's kind of like everything theory. It was just not specific enough to handle specifically cholera of this variety, this specific bacteria. But it was still an overall functional for, like, general wash your damn hands. Good fucking, okay.
Directly worked without even figuring out that it was from water. If
well,
the environment was super clean.
Because they're trying to suppress smells and effluvia. You know, the whole idea of these noxious things. Even at the end of the century, when they have an outbreak of infection, they're dousing the streets with chloride of lime. I suspect in the States as well, in the big cities, because it was the whole approach. When we started treating water, well, now in many countries we have chlorine, of course, and other treatments to clean the water. But water treatment started with treating the sewage, and they only
Flint, Michigan.
Treated the sewage. It was quite ironic.
Not the water that you were going to drink.
The stuff that's gone out, because they wanted it not to smell. So at the same time, if you like, as Snow is doing these researches, there is this growing fear of dirty areas. And so it's not that people don't think that dirty water can make you sick.
Yeah.
They don't quite understand why it should be something in the water.
Right.
It's very hard for us to put ourselves into a mindset of such a fundamentally different thing.
Did Snow, I've also read accounts of him, holding up the water and looking to see if it was cloudy and
Yes, he
trying
did.
to examine it. But did he have a microscope?
I don't know if he actually possessed one himself. He certainly had friends and colleagues.
Okay.
There's a guy called Hassel who did look down a microscope. And in fact, Snow gave him some samples and he looked down and saw things that might be...
Cholera bacteria are quite small, right?
Yeah, they're little rod-shaped
Yeah,
bacteria.
and so would they have had a microscope good enough to see them even
Maybe, yes, but there's a whole mess.
Yeah.
I mean, what you have to know in modern microbiology, if you just look at a specimen, say, of soil, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to know how to grow it, grow out the other things, so that you can focus in. And there are some organisms like the one that causes Legionnaire's disease, Campylobacter and a few others, that are so fastidious that we couldn't grow them for years until we realised how to actually give them just the right conditions. So just looking down at a murky water, I mean, what Snow noticed was that this water was...
There's something utterly horrifying about how Longflint, Michigan has been a joke. Yeah, the fact that it's still a problem that hasn't been rectified in a society that claims to be a first world country is absurd. It's absurdist.
It was lovely when it came out of that. In fact, it was so lovely that people were actually using it for local cafes and wine shops.
And then there's that terrible story about the son who sent the water to his mother and made this exceptional case
to
in the
Mrs.
outlying...
Ely, who lived up in what's now West Hampstead, today. But he would, that's not so far, but I mean it's sort of up the hill on the way to the Vale of Health in Hampstead. And ironically, nobody got cholera but in Hampstead except for her and her niece who was visiting.
Right, this seems to me such ironclad evidence.
Oh, and this was presented.
Right.
And Snow said, well, surely you can see that the water was taken and she
Basically,
took it.
we poisoned
and they said,
her. Yeah.
well, somehow the effluvia from Soho must have kind of floated over them. No, they actually seriously proposed, floated over and...
Rain exists. But the fact that it only affected the one lady, right? Like, it takes time, right? To convince anybody of anything, it takes time.
Somehow, perhaps because she was a vulnerable old lady, they weren't going to suggest that she was immoral, but that it's somehow, she was sort of a sitting pigeon,
I don't know, the words climate change deniers just keep going through my head.
Well,
oh, really?
Very interesting. Yes. I think before we mock, I'm sure there are lots
we're going to mock. I'm mocking climate change denial.
Lots of things we hold today.
Oh, of course.
And we only have to think of, the flat earth theory and all the rest. That until we can actually see our planet from space.
Except for the flat earthers who have actually, what do you mean? We had to send one of them to fucking Antarctica. There's some people who I like to affectionately call tactile learners. They will only learn when it happens to them.
I think a lot of people were still going, and it's the same with the miasma theory, which, can I just say, is still alive and kicking. You only have to look at advertisements on the TV for anything to do with hygiene, and it always emphasises how clean it'll smell, And that's because that's the miasma side, because we as human beings don't think if something smells bad, it must be
And we do think
illness.
if it tastes okay, it probably is fine, and that's not usually.
And this water tasted
good
more
test.
than okay,
Yeah.
because it had a lot of salt in it from the various sewage in it, and also a lot of nitrates, which made it fizzy. And so it had a slight
Natural
fizz. So
sparkling
it was
water.
really attractive water. But what Snow found was if you left it on a shelf for a couple of days,
I don't know about you guys, but I'd be concerned about naturally fizzy water.
it went cloudy. Now, if you try that experiment with a glass of London water today, it might taste a little stale after 2 days, but it'd be perfectly okay.
And is the cloudiness related to the bacteria in the
Yeah,
water?
the cloudiness was related to the organic contamination, which left on its own in the water meant, I mean, any water has got a small amount of bacteria in it. It's not a pure product,
Right.
even treated water.
Right.
And many people feel that that's good for us, so it should be so.
Right.
But the water from that pump was seriously loaded. So once you left that on a shelf, it would go cloudy very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why if something's bad, it goes off quite quickly.
Yeah. That's
You know.
true. We all know this
Well,
from
we know
personal
this.
experience.
And,
Yes.
and it's very, I think it's very interesting about the miasma theory, and I think there's a lot of very interesting theses to be done on
It's
it.
true, but people just don't like things that smell bad.
No, well, if we take
yeah.
a great figure like Florence Nightingale,
Yeah.
who worked on the cholera outbreak at the same time that Snow was investigating
Right.
it, she never believed in the germ theory, and she died in 1910.
I mean, to be fair, this is not unreasonable to not want to be around things that smell bad. Like that's not an unreasonable thing to want, not to use that as your only way to make decisions about city structures and whether or not someone is sick or ill or X, Y, and Z. Like we still use smell to detect things, right? Like that's not new. It is never going to go away. But we also know better than to only use that, and we also know better to eat things like durian fruit, right? Things that smell bad but are delicious and or are good for you. Like even medicine, right? It tastes bad but it works. Buckley's, right? Like
She
Really?
went through her entire career.
Florence Nightingale never believed
No,
in the germ
she
theory of
believed
disease
she believed
right up until
always
1910.
open the
I don't know anything about this lady, so I'm not going to dunk on her.
windows, get ventilation in, and scrub everything. She believed in she made a lot of difference
Yeah.
out in the Crimean War just by insisting that everything
Hygiene.
should be clean.
Yeah.
And right at the end of her career, I mean, she was forced to accept that they had found these germs. But what she maintained was that if you were locked up in an unventilated, dirty place, you could generate these. They were in you. And that's part of the miasma theory, is that
It's true, it's on
it
level.
isn't, it's like you do it.
Yeah.
So that's why the whole morality thing came in. And that's why people would, healthy body, healthy mind, that basically if you kept yourself really fit, and there are people who talk like this today, then the germs, and it can't affect you. Because basically it was considered a sort of breakdown,
Yeah.
not something
Well, at
invading.
some level, right? If your immune system is weakened because you're so sick or so
Exactly.
unfit or whatever, it is true that the germs get. So, like a lot of these sort of theories, they're sort of headed in the right direction, but they're not the.
It really just depends on how you're using flexible terms like weak and fit. Like these are not, strong is not an effective term when you're talking about someone's resistance to a bacteria, right? Like doesn't quite work that way.
Whole picture. When you read very short accounts of this map, or when you see it presented in other documentaries or whatever, you often get the impression that Jon Snow is, walking around Soho with a clipboard and this map and putting dots and making this histogram as he walks around, which is not true. And in fact, the more scholarly accounts that I've read make it sound like he made the whole map after, well after this was over.
Yes, that's
And so
right.
did he have a map he was making in his head? Did he have a sketch? Did he just
Well-
use tables and have a picture in his head, or what did he
He
do?
he was very good at drawing up tables, and it was something because
I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit because we already heard this part.
Except there's this character on what is it, Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Is that the,
Oh, for fuck's sakes! We made it this whole time, and they fucking... God damn it.
there's a famous Jon Snow now on TV.
Oh, I've heard.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't watch
Spelled
it.
differently.
But, yeah.
Well, I guess this video is now at least a little bit dated. This video was made in and around Game of Thrones coming out.
Anyway,
So the answer is he did the map to make his case. And I think it's very interesting that he chose, to do like a little mini histogram of the little stacks
Right.
of the deaths. And I think that is quite extraordinary. Certainly, there were loads of maps.
and there were dot maps,
There were dot maps,
but
and
not
also
necessarily histograms.
people were very interested in geology. Remember, the whole miasma theory made you think of the environment. A lot of doctors were very well versed in what made up soil, what made up buildings, They'd even get interested in architecture and designing of things. And so they would draw very detailed maps of an outbreak area. But that would be sort of different. Snow, in doing this one, he's already absolutely convinced. And so that's when he does, if you like, the Voronoi.
The line.
They brought up confirmation bias earlier, and I'm wondering how they're going to apply confirmation bias to Jon. Like, how did Jon Snow make sure that he wasn't just doing confirmation bias? If he started his theory already convinced. He started his research already convinced that water was part of this scenario. So how did he get out of that? Or does confirmation bias not matter if you're right? Because that's a very dangerous way of thinking, because you don't necessarily know you're just assuming you're correct.
Well, before
the walking
it's
distances.
named Voronoi, of course.
Right.
So it shows you what an original mind he had.
And just to remind everybody what that is, that's showing a wavy line that shows the walking distance to various places from various pumps on the map. And he showed that this weird pattern of deaths is all within one kind of walking distance from the Broad Street pump.
And very important to know that there would be pumps at loads of other locations. I think on the first mark, we haven't got any little marks. But then on one of our later marks, we maybe we don't.
Of the other pumps?
Yeah, we actually, not the other pumps, but we actually put the little histograms in.
Oh, okay.
But basically, that's kind of remarkable because that in itself shows you. But on one of his earlier maps, I'm pretty sure that there are the other pumps shown as well. So
Definitely, they're here.
Yeah. So that people could actually see that, for instance, Golden Square, where there were lots of cafes and it was a classier neighbourhood, because they had a pump. So why were they using the Broad Street water? Because it tasted better.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing. Why would sewage and water taste good to us? I have a tiny theory about this, which may go back to the early origins of man, that when we were lost in those very early communities, a long way from home, actually the smell of human sewage, which we're very highly evolved, we can smell the molecules from sewage compounds at an incredibly small level.
I noticed that on the train
must have some kind of evolutionary
when I moved.
So I hate to say this, but we were probably, once you tasted the water and it tasted a bit sweet, you'd know you're near the village, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so...
Okay.
So in a way, people have written about, the disgust that we now feel. If you knew there was sewage in your water, you wouldn't drink it. But because these people didn't know it. And they certainly, if they saw stuff in the water, just like us.
I am not convinced by what this lady is saying. I think she's speculating at best. It's just some, headcanon-y ideas. I don't know about this one, guys.
They'd react just like us.
I'm not going to drink that.
And everybody had filters, so they would filter the water. They'd drain out frogs and things. They wouldn't be drinking it with all sorts of junk in it. But basically, if the water looked good, and microscopes, as you say, were pretty primitive. Yeah. And we know Pasteur, he helps to save the British brewing industry when he shows his friend Whitbread that the beer he's making might have got contaminated.
Can we point out that we had the ability to brew beer, which is microbes, for years? Wine and am I lost in the sauce right now?
20 years later. So it's at a particular moment in time before microscopy is fully evolving as a proper science, before the hygiene methods have really got going. And yet Snow...
I stand by, God didn't give us soap.
...is 40 years ahead of his time. In a way, it's tragic he didn't live to see that. And what would he have contributed? Masses, I think.
Yes. And so when you say 40 years ahead of the time, and we talked before about...
I guess...
phenomena now that we think maybe we understand that we're probably totally wrong about the explanation. And then there are some cases where we think we understand a little, but we don't understand a lot. And they definitely play into stories like this. And so the one I wanted to ask you about is genomics and sort of adding the micro level of information to epidemiology, which you're an expert on generally. So in other words, now when people do this kind of study, I know that there are different approaches.
I really do think that we are crossing our streams with anthropology, like ancient anthropology.
That people take their approaches where they do it purely statistically, and they look at these SEIR models and the SER models, and they're just sort of saying, okay, everybody is the same, and we're going to have this infection, and it's going to spread. But then there are these other sort of more patient-based models where you look at an individual person, and then you say, what's their susceptibility to this disease, and does that factor in? And do we know enough about genomics now to know, how important that really is in terms of if you were going to make the computer model, which we get to later in the course, of global health or of the spread of some particular disease? Some people would say that it's the human factors and the politics that are kind of more important than anything else. Other people would say it's the medical effects, and other people would say it's the sort of microbiological effects. And so where are you on that sort of how much of this is important spectrum?
Obviously, we know a lot about the human genome, and we've made huge advances. I'd say we still don't fully understand. We know a lot about susceptibility.
Right.
I would say, and I've always wanted this in outbreaks, we should study the people who don't get sick.
Yeah.
Because
Snow did.
Yes.
Right? He found the brewery workers and the...
Yes, he did. And that is remarkable for his period in time.
Yeah.
That he actually...
Is it? Is that remarkable? It doesn't seem like it's remarkable. It seems like he was a normal dude doing exactly what you would expect him to do in this scenario. I don't understand.
She looks at the people who don't get sick. And in a way, often when we're really busy investigating things, Ebola, whatever it is we're investigating, we should be looking.
I like Low Energy Vid's comment. Some people say it's tiny demons that live in your butt that make you ill. But here's the thing. It might be. If by tiny demons you mean microbes and bacteria.
Very much at the people who don't get it, as well as, of course, as the people who get it, because we want to prevent it in them. And although we know
this really just seems like a Eurocentric, like we're focusing on London, England, because we're biased because of where we are from. That's what this seems like. It just seems like there's just a lot being put on this one scenario and a lot of hype being put on this one guy. Good God.
We know a lot about susceptibility, and we know that there are particular loci for susceptibility to bacterial infections and viral infections, and perhaps the public don't want to know. Would you really want to know if you're susceptible to
Well, I think you don't want an oversimplified model. I mean, we talk about climate change simulation.
If you're the public, would you want to know if you were susceptible to getting sick from something, so you should stay away from it? You mean like an allergy? What? Are you serious?
A lot in the latter part of the course, and there it's really hard to explain to people that you can't just say sea level rise is the best example. Okay, so you say, okay, well, what if the sea level goes up by an inch worldwide? It's not a bathtub. You can't just say the water goes up and everywhere the coastline recedes by whatever the angle is by an inch. It turns out that the pressure of the water on the earth and what the seabed is made of actually makes it a very complicated calculation to figure out.
They're complaining about science communication. And yeah, explaining and communicating science is difficult. It'd be great if sites like Google and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and social media helped with that. Unfortunately, it's not as profitable. Because lying to people is more profitable.
What sea level rise is, which then complicates the modeling more that depends on the amount of water in a particular area. And so this interconnection between different kind of input parameters and output parameters is something that we try to emphasize in kind of how the computer modeling works. And so it seems to me that the more you factor in things like susceptibility in modeling outbreaks, the more complicated it becomes.
Yeah, the more you add to something, the more you added a thing to it. It is now by fiat more complicated. What are you talking about?
Potentially the more accurate it becomes, but also
You're driving me crazy.
the harder to explain. I mean, poor Jon Snow is going there saying, look, we shipped water
Yeah, poor Jon Snow, whatever.
to this woman nowhere near the outbreak,
Yeah.
and she died. Is that not enough information
Yeah.
for you? No, and so there's
No, and they'd say, well, she was an old lady and she,
Right.
But for all they know, she could have gotten it individually from a totally separate thing.
And so the same thing. So
Whatever.
when you say what I want to know,
That's reasonably skeptical. You need more than one fucking example. Why do you think it took another epidemic? I don't understand. Like, you don't just do one experiment, that one experiment works, and we're like, and then everybody just collectively agrees. That's just not how humans function, and it's not how we should function. The whole point of the scientific method is repeatability. Why do I feel like we're just taking a repeatability and throwing it out the fucking window? Yes, I would like to know if I have a higher rate of getting sick with breast cancer or ovarian fuck you. There are reasons why we try to track the diseases within family lines. Yes.
know if I'm susceptible to some disease.
Yeah, we're almost done.
My answer is I know enough people who do genomics research to know that it's not usually, it's a very rare case where it's one gene, and if you have that gene, you're going to get that disease. It's that gene combined with a lot of other things combined with environmental conditions.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the cholera in the 1854, one of the reasons why that local area of Soho was so susceptible is they'd had relatively clean water. So they'd been spared a lot of the cholera exposure.
Yeah.
So they developed no immunity. I mean,
You can develop immunity
Yeah,
to
what we
cholera,
know with
yeah.
most bacterial infections is that you get 2 or 3 years. It varies, and of course it depends on
As they haven't killed off everybody who already got it yet.
strains, and with viruses it can be even longer, unless they're very good at mutating new strains.
So 2 or 3 years for what? Sorry.
Immunity.
Okay.
So that you might get, so for instance, the people in South London, one of the reasons why they don't get the cholera epidemics every year is that the people who get the very mild infection, they get immune.
This is almost the inoculation theory.
And yes, and so the whole problem with infectious diseases, and one of the whole things, I think,
This is the kind of thing that gets clipped out and then taken by anti-vaxxers to be like, oh, well, we don't need herd immunity, we don't need vaccines.
makes the hygiene hypothesis such an annoying
Yes.
idea.
Yeah.
This idea that we should be exposed to the real thing. Well, the problem with that is that a quarter of us used to die when we were exposed to the real thing. And so a quarter of our children certainly would die, right up until the 1900s.
It depends on if you view that as a problem or not. Some people don't view that as a problem. They're just like, well, that's part of what makes us stronger. So, like, how do you argue that then?
And so what was happening in that Soho area was, if you like, the perfect experiment for snow, because you have a genetically susceptible population that haven't been exposed to much cholera, so that when they get a violent attack via their water supply, a load of them are very susceptible.
Right.
And what you find in any normal outbreak when you're investigating is that even with a very high dose of the disease, the attack rate's relatively low. All sorts of things, age, previous infections. Often you find military personnel are very protected.
Because they've been a lot of places.
They've been to a lot of places, and sometimes they've had a lot of vaccines as well, and they're fit and they're very tough.
Right.
And in fact, you get these fallacies of stats where if your controls contain too many of these kind of super fit
Statistics are complicated, and most average person out there who hasn't done any studying of statistics will not be able to identify or properly read statistics, which is why they get used and weaponized in the news and politics all the time.
people, you get a very poor impression.
So you do have to account for all those other factors.
You do. And the fact that the nutrition would have been very bad.
Right.
They're literally explaining why miasma theory is kind of correct.
For a lot of those people, they'd have been eating very poorly. Probably they weren't well hydrated, because the way they did it was the water would come in for 2 hours a day. They'd fill the water tub in the house. There'd probably be only one tap. And then the rest of the house, for the rest of the day, they'd come and dip their pots in, and by the end of the day, it would probably be pretty dirty. And after a couple of days, because they wouldn't fill it every day, they'd fill it, and then they'd wait a couple of days, and they'd fill it again. And so, in fact, at the brewery, they had such a system.
Right.
But most of the workers were paid in beer.
Right.
And at that time, they had a kind of very dilute beer that was suitable for children as well.
Yeah.
You know, so that they actually closed.
I'm sorry, what? They had a very diluted beer that was suitable for children. Was it suitable for children, actually? Or did they just think it was suitable enough for children? I would like some clarification on that statement, thank you.
Off the communal water very early on, so that the workers were particularly protected at the brewery. And at the workhouse, people have said, well, if they were susceptible,
Right.
the people in the workhouse would be old and poor
Right.
and poorly nourished.
Right.
Surely
And
they'd
they
have
did
been
not die.
gone down like skittles.
Right.
Why didn't they?
They had their own well.
Because they had their own well.
Right.
And that shows you that even though they would have been highly susceptible, it shows you that cholera is not that catchy. And that since it wasn't in their water, and of course being in the workhouse, they wouldn't go out much. So poor things, they might have yearned to go, and they'd heard about the John Snow, not the John Snow, the Broad Street pub, but they'd not be allowed out.
Good for them. I have one last question.
Okay.
In terms of prediction, do you think that we can get to a point now where we would reliably be able to predict who would be susceptible to cholera? Would we be able to test people to predict on an individual basis whether people would be...
I think...
Like, can you find immunity to cholera in someone's blood test?
Yes.
You can.
And I think it's highly likely that in the future we'd have to get the social problems sorted out, insurance and so on. But I think it's highly likely that we'll be able to predict... particularly
Until you put fucking drugs back in my tampons, I don't care.
particularly people at particular risk of infections. We know already that there are several loci that make you more susceptible to certain bacteria, like the ones that cause meningitis, and that those people would be priority candidates for vaccination. So I think it's highly likely in maybe 100 years. I don't think it'll happen very quickly because the tests would probably be quite expensive if they're based on genomic tests. So yeah, it's possible.
Okay,
We're going to get there.
Good. We'll end on an up note. Okay, thank you.
We did it. We got through it. All right, everybody go to Dapper's channel. I'll see you over there probably. He's doing a 4-hour and change premiere right now. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll be covering more of this. It's Dumbfuck Friday tomorrow, so join me for Dumbfuck Friday tomorrow. And then we'll be back with more of this on Tuesday. Bye! God, that got kind of dumb at the end. That was not a great... that is not a great conversation. I don't know. Okay, bye.